Price chat is saying every economic measure is better. People are simply overspending individually, and that's why they aren't doing well economically. Wow, Prolaw. I actually agree with that in a lot of ways, Prolaw. That's actually pretty conservative viewpoint on the whole thing. Really, that's actually what conservatives say. So IRI's entire community is now basically gone. Top generals, top military officers who were promoting racism in the workplace, who were promoting wokeism, who were promoting DEI, who were promoting top generals, top military. It's military readiness. There dang well better be a chilling effect on woke generals. We also just put Pete Hegseth in there, so you. Kane Marco, what's up, Kane Marco? You ready to see what the Sunday shows were all about? You ready to see what the Sunday shows are all about? I'm making some clips here for YouTube first. Street Journal article. Trump draft executive order would create a board to purge generals out. Panel could upend military review process, raise concerns about politicization of military. The Trump dude, it's like, no. Board to purge generals, good. Actually, we'll just do this many. Call it good.
People that aren't just going to be, tribal, aren't going to just be, pigeonholed in a certain way. And I think that that's something that the Democratic Party needs to confront about what it means to be different from the status quo.
What does that mean? Policy?
Yeah, guys like this as Democrats scare me. Like, if the Democrats were all like this guy, I'd be a little bit concerned. All right, let's see what Maria Bartiromo had going this morning. You guys ready for Maria? Maria. Oh my goodness, they had Hakeem and Mark Wayne Jones on. Oh my goodness, guys. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, guys. Oh my.
In this Sunday morning with the blockbuster cabinet nominations and appointments announced this week, President-elect Trump nominating former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz to be U.S. Attorney General, Iraq and Afghanistan veteran and Fox News host Pete Hegseth to be Defense Secretary, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be Health and Human Services.
Exactly, Kane Marco. Amen, brother.
Secretary. All of this following earlier announcements, including South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem for Homeland Security Secretary, Florida Senator Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, and veteran and former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence. President Trump's nominations were met with fierce hostility and backlash from Democrats and the mainstream media, and support from Republicans.
Look, Matt Gaetz is a brilliant legal mind. Matt Gaetz will be the left-wing socialist's worst enemy when I think he will get confirmed. Matt can handle himself. He has nothing to hide.
It's one thing to pick people who are loyal to the president. It's another to pick people who are so patently unqualified and who would just trash the Justice Department and use it for purely partisan purposes.
All of this just...
Oh my word, it's just too much to handle. Him sitting there literally saying, "Oh no, we don't want him to do exactly what Democrats did."
Despite President Biden's Attorney General Merrick Garland's reportedly weaponized DOJ, FBI, CIA, and Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who has overseen the flow of more than 10 million people illegally entering the country. Now we turn to the road ahead and whether President Trump will get his nominees confirmed. Joining me now are two people who will
be... Oh, you know what I needed to do as well is I wanted to make a highlight from my last stream. go for right here. Oh man, did I really only last 5 minutes in that battle royale?
Be among those to decide. Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt and Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you, Maria.
Eric Schmitt, let me start with you. Are you expecting President Trump's nominees to pass through the confirmation hearings and get confirmed?
I do. I think if you take a step back and look at what happened in this election, President Trump delivered the greatest political comeback in American history. The Democrats tried to keep him off the ballot. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to throw him in jail for the rest of his life. He survived all of, including assassination attempts. He survived all of that and emerged winning all the battleground states, including the popular vote. How did he do it? He created a multi-ethnic, working class coalition, really the disruptors versus the establishment. I think that's important to note as we roll into these confirmation hearings. He is willing to take on permanent Washington in a way that no president has, certainly in my lifetime. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to deliver that change, to take on permanent Washington, return the power back to the people. But you can't just do it with the Article 1 branch. You have to have people you trust to go into these agencies and have a real reform agenda.
The agencies are part of Article 1 branch. Little point of disagreement there.
And that's why I think there's real momentum to get these nominations confirmed to actually deliver what President Trump promised on the campaign trail.
Are you planning to vote yes on all of his nominees?
I do. I think we need reformers. I think we need disruptors. I think we need people who want to see real change in these agencies. You look at the Justice Department, they were going after Catholics, moms who showed up to school board meetings, trying to throw the chief political opponent of President Biden in jail. This is nonsense. And so we need real reformers up and down the cabinet, and I think President Trump has put forth qualified nominees.
But Tommy Tuberville, now I'd like your take on it. Let's admit, gentlemen, even Republicans, some Republicans are against some of his nominees. There were Republicans that were talking against Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. So I ask you the same question. Will his nominees get confirmed?
Well, there's going to be a lot of hard work, Maria. I've been in the Senate for 4 years, and we've fought back against this radical agenda from the left. We've had to play defense. We've had no chance to play offense. Now we have a new head coach and President Trump. He'll start January the 20th, but we'll start in the new Congress January the 5th. And we need to all come together. Our job in the Senate is to advise.
Agreed, Kane Marco.
And consent. And we need to talk about each one of these confirmees. If anybody's got any problems between now and January the 5th, let's work this out. We've got the numbers to do it ourselves. We don't need any Democrats to help us. We've got the numbers. Let's step to the plate, do our job, because we have to get this country back going in the right direction. President Trump only has a short period of time. 4 years is not long, and we're going to need every second to get this country back going in the right direction. But he needs the team around him that's going to help him. He can't do it by himself.
What specifically do you think the focus will be on the confirmation hearing for the AG, Matt Gaetz? What do you want to hear from Matt Gaetz that you believe will placate some of the naysayers out there, if there's anything?
Well, I think getting the Justice Department back to what it should be doing, which is going after violent crime. We've seen unprecedented rises in violent crime across the country. The FBI statistics bear that out. We need an attorney general that is going to actually get that department focused on what it should be, which is protecting the American people, protecting their constitutional rights. That's what
Guitar player. Well, thanks for stopping in, guitar player. Welcome.
Government's supposed to do. Its mission is to protect our rights, not to infringe upon them and settle these petty political scores that we've seen Merrick Garland do. It's been a stain on the Justice Department. It's been the worst 4 years that agency has ever seen, and we need somebody that's going to go in there, shake things up, and get it back to where it should be.
Yeah, maybe, but there was also real political dirty tricks played on President Trump, and there was no one that was held accountable.
Oh, okay. Bummer, guitar player.
For that Russia collusion hoax. Should they be held accountable now, Tommy Tuberville?
Yes, Maria, we need a fighter. We don't need somebody that's going to wade their way in, feel their way around. Matt Gaetz has been there. He's seen everything. He's been up close and personal. He's talked about it on the House floor. He's been in the Judiciary Committee. He's not going to be new to this. He understands it. He's a lawyer. He's very good on his feet. He knows how to interrogate people. And we need a fighter. And President Trump needs a fighter. But the main thing for President Trump, he needs loyalty. He needs somebody that understands it, but's going to watch his back, not stand up for things that are wrong, but we need a attorney general that's going to stand up for the Constitution and make sure we go by the Constitution. And
I think he'll be confirmed, Altair. Even if like 2 or 3 rhinos vote no and Mike or JD Vance has to come in and break the tie, yes, I think Matt Gaetz will be confirmed, because I think that if anybody that tries to vote no on him is going to be immediately blackballed and blackballed from the Trump administration, from the Republican Party going forward, which is, you're not going to want to do that. Senator's not going to want to do that.
don't weaponize the DOJ.
Let's talk about RFK. There's also Republicans pushing back on his leadership for the HHS position. Your thoughts? What comes out in that hearing? Now, I expect these hearings to be, early January? Eric Schmidt?
Yeah, I think we'll get going. Yeah, I think we'll get going in early January, right after the new Congress is sworn in, and I'd like to see some accountability there as well. I think when I was Attorney General in Missouri, we sued on the Missouri versus Biden, which exposed this vast censorship enterprise. HHS was right in the middle of that. Anthony Fauci, we took his deposition. I think there needs to be real accountability. The lies that were pushed onto the American people did great damage, ruined livelihoods. You had people being fired for their jobs because they questioned the quote-unquote science and did get shot. This is nuts. It was Orwellian, and I think that there needs to be real investigations in that way, and I think RFK can provide change.
Wow, that's terrible, guitar player. I didn't realize that. That's horrible. Lisa, welcome, Lisa.
To help President Trump deliver on his campaign promises.
Senator Tuberville, President Trump has been very clear. His priorities will be deporting the millions, and certainly beginning with those who have committed crimes in this country. How will that work in terms of, he's going to do executive orders, I know that, on the first day and in the first 100 days. But in terms of actual legislation, what are you expecting in the Senate with regard to the deportation and the extending of the tax cuts?
Well, obviously, the first thing we'll do is border and tax cuts, Maria. But the thing about President Trump, he understands the problem. He's been all throughout the country. We've been overrun by illegal immigrants, some good, some bad. We can all understand that. But Tom Homan's the perfect guy for this because he understands law enforcement. He's going to get...
No, it's a great point. It's a great point, Altair. And think of it, Merrick Garland got 70 yes votes in the U.S. Senate, 70 to 30. It's like, I'm sorry, if you're willing to vote for and confirm Merrick Garland, and after you see what he did in the Department of Justice, Matt Gaetz should be a shoo-in. This should be easy to get Matt Gaetz. He should get 99 to 1 type of thing.
Get all local, state, federal law enforcement together. He's going to do as much as he possibly can to rid the people in this country that's costing us billions of dollars a month, Maria. We can't afford this. We need to get back to helping the people of this country. But Tom Homan is the perfect choice for this to start this process. There will be more lawsuits on this than you can shake a stick at because the Democrats are going to fight this from day one because they know this is their voters, not their citizens.
Yep. All right, gentlemen, we'll be watching your work. Thanks very much for being here this morning. Senators Eric Schmidt and Tommy Tuberville, thank you. And now this.
They're going to be saving a lot of money and making our country stronger and better, and they'll be coming out with individual reports, but a big one toward the end. And you put those two together, it's going to be really great.
Player.
Jimmy. And that is President-elect Trump and on Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy leading the newly created Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, to identify and cut wasteful spending of taxpayer money within the federal government. As America stares over a fiscal cliff due to the $7 trillion in new spending by the Biden-Harris administration, which sent inflation up better than 20%. The national debt now standing at $36 trillion, with interest on the debt alone approaching $1 trillion. Joining me now in this Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is the co-leader of that department, the Department of Government Efficiency, Vivek Ramaswamy, with me this morning. Great to see you.
It's good to see you, Maria.
Thank you so much for joining us. Happy to have you here on set. I want to get your take on how this begins.
Sure.
What are you looking to cut right from the beginning?
So first is we want to go right in through executive action to do the failures of the executive branch that need to be addressed. Because the dirty little secret right now, Maria, is the people we elect to run the government, they're not the ones who actually run the government. It's the unelected bureaucrats in the administrative state. That was created through executive action. It's going to be fixed through executive.
Boom! I love it. And it's like, yeah, how could you pretend to be pro-democracy and say that this is pro-democracy? Great point by Vivek.
Action. Think about the Supreme Court's environment over the last several years. They've held that many of those regulations are unconstitutional at a large scale. Rescind those regulations, pull those regs back, and then that gives us the industrial logic to then downsize the size of that administrative state. And the beauty of all of this is that can be achieved just through executive action without Congress. Score some early wins, and then you look at those bigger portions of the federal budget that need to be addressed one by one. So I think that's one.
Altair, you can't heist 10,000. The maximum is 1337. The maximum is 1337, Altair, and you don't have that many. You can do exclamation point polls to see how many you have. Because remember, everything got reset to 0 on election day. Doesn't look like you've been here too much, Altair, since the election.
One way to think about this is, how can the President of the United States, who's been elected with a historic mandate, actually do the thing that the voters have voted for? They haven't voted for incremental change here this time, Maria. We have voted for sweeping change, and the voters actually deserve to get it. And we're focused on how to do that as early and as quickly as possible.
So President-elect Trump just said on that soundbite that you're going to make recommendations. So you're going to make recommendations in terms of where to cut after all that you've just said. Then what?
Look, we're not going to be cutting ribbons. We're going to be cutting costs. And so those recommendations are going to be on a real-time basis. But I do want to take a big step back and understand, for people to understand the scope of this problem. Over $500 billion that's spent every year right now was not even authorized by Congress in the first place. The Pentagon has just failed its 7th consecutive audit, nearly $1 trillion of budget. They can't even tell you where it goes. So I think part of this is exposing for the public the extent of that rot and waste, but then to take steps first through executive action and then laying the groundwork for broader change through legislation as well to rein in that deficit, to rein in that budget. And more crucially, Maria.
Sounds amazing. Sounds amazing.
I know we're talking about this in terms of efficiency, but there's something deeper going on here. This is about restoring self-governance and accountability in America as well. Elected leaders, if they make the wrong decisions, voters have a great choice. You can vote them out and remove them. Most of the people making these decisions, from healthcare to the Department of Defense, are failing on effectiveness because they have no accountability. Historically, it's been the view of many scholars to say that those people could not even be fired. Now we take a different view with the environment the Supreme Court has given us in recent years, and we're going to use that in a pretty extensive way, Maria, to move quickly.
You're going to have pushback, not just from the left. You may have pushback from those very people who are running those departments, running those agencies. They want as many people as they want in there. You're going to want to fire people. Yeah. So how are you going to deal with that? You're also perhaps looking at pushback from Congress. How are you going to deal with Congress? How are you going to deal with having Congress need to change the law?
Well, look, the beauty of this is I think we have a lot of allies in Congress who have their heart in the right place. But what we've learned is over the last 40 years, even conservatives, we've talked a big game for 40 years about cutting the federal government, about reducing the scope of the federal government. Politicians haven't been able to do it. And so Elon and I, we're not politicians. We're businessmen. We're coming at it from the outside. Sometimes if you go inside, you become native to the system. So President Trump, I applaud him for his creativity and his open-mindedness to setting this up for success in a way that hasn't happened before. But I come back to the principle. In the early months, score quick wins through executive action, show what can be done then, and then I think we will lay the groundwork for Congress to have to take meaningful steps in budget reductions for the future. A lot of these discussions we have are theoretical, right? I have to cut different entitlement programs or whatever. Let's start with the fact that there is massive waste, fraud, and abuse right now. Federal contractors are really exploiting the federal government. You could take haircuts across the board, and they would be no worse off for it. And it's not just about cutting cost, but increasing effectiveness from defense to healthcare. A lot of that is a failure of the administrative state itself, Maria, that rests under the executive branch. And I'm optimistic. It's part of why we've set an end date on this. Our work is done by July 4th, 2026. Unlike every other government project, we don't want this one to last. We want to go in, fix the problem, dissolve, and move on, and set an example for how our federal government should run.
I love that. But again, you are going to face pushback from within.
Sure.
And you are going to have to make this so compelling that you get the support, congressional support. So how do you do that?
Well, look, I think the public is on our side. Most of the public understands their taxpayer dollars are not being well spent. They want to hold these decision makers accountable, and they're not able to. These congressmen are responsive to the people. Many of them are quietly on our side as well. So I think the division of responsibilities, a lot of people who face two-year election cycles in political Congress, they end up looking at what's happening tomorrow. We're looking at the next 250 years. We want to give them credit for doing the right thing. Elon and I aren't in this for the credit, but I think we're going to build the consensus to make the kind of deep cuts that haven't been made for most of our history.
Are you expecting to close down entire agencies, like President Trump has talked about the Department of Education, for example? Are you going to be closing down departments?
We expect mass reductions. We expect certain agencies to be deleted outright. We expect mass reductions in force in areas of the federal government that are bloated. We expect massive cuts among federal contractors and others who are overbilling the federal government. So, yes, we expect all of...
If they actually deliver even 50% of that, I would count it as a massive, massive blowout, historical, greatest success of all time type thing.
The above, and I think people will be surprised by, I think, how quickly we're able to move with some of those changes, given the legal backdrop the Supreme Court has given us.
You've got what has been called a deep state. You've got people who have been career bureaucrats in place right now. Didn't President Biden put in plans to ensure that you're not going to be able to fire those people at all? How do you get around that? And, you know, I asked Joni Ernst, are you for term limits? She says, yes, I am for term limits, as long as the people around me are also for term limits. That's not in place right now. So how do you get rid of those people who are dug in?
Well, a lot of what's happened is President Biden has made a lot of changes trying to entrench the administrative state. The Supreme Court has slapped them on the wrist numerous times. So we're working with a legal landscape here that is historic. You think about a president of the United States like Donald Trump, elected with the mandate he's been given, both chambers of Congress belonging to Republicans, a 6-3 conservative majority in the Supreme Court. Marie, if we don't downsize the federal government now, it's never going to happen in the future as well. So this is a historic opportunity. We're not actually going to squander this, but I think part of the key is to move quickly, to move effectively. I think that mass deregulation that I talked about earlier, that gives us the industrial logic to then make cuts to that bureaucracy, and moving quickly is our objective.
Have you thought about moving some of these departments or agencies out of Washington?
It's funny you bring up this point. Yes is the answer, but here's why. They'll say, well, what happens to the people who live in Washington, D.C.? Here's the dirty little secret in the federal bureaucracy today. Most people don't even show up to work. So if you require most of those federal bureaucrats to just say, like normal working Americans, you come to work 5 days a week, a lot of them won't want to do that. And by the way, that creates a logic for many of those agencies being outside of D.C. in the first place. So these are, again, examples. It's a great point you just brought up.
So would you
sweeping
move,
changes we're able to make quickly.
You could move the Energy Department to Texas or to Pennsylvania. You could move agriculture somewhere else. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, look, I think that, yes, absolutely. But I think even bigger picture than that, many of these agencies should be downsized wherever they are. And for whatever does remain, move many of them out to be where they're more accountable to the people. And by the way, if you have many voluntary reductions in force of the workforce in the federal government along the way, great. That's a good side effect of those policies as well. And so our goal is not to be cruel, by the way, to the individual federal employees. Most of them, I do want to say this, are individually good people, and we want to be compassionate and generous in how we handle this transition. But the real issue is there's just too many of them. We don't need 4 million, and we shouldn't have 4 million civil servants who can't be elected, or aren't even elected or can't be removed from their positions. It's anti-democratic.
Real quick, we got to jump, but when you look from 30,000 feet, I know you're just getting into this now. Which agency or department is the most bloated, would you say?
It's a tough competition. It's across the administrative state. I mean, President Trump's talked extensively about areas like the Department of Education. Obviously, those kinds of agencies shouldn't even exist and should be returned to the states. But it's a culture, Maria, that's pervaded the entire federal government of hiring people who have no accountability to everyday Americans. And I think that's what's going to change when you take this new effort at DOGE, at the Department of Government Efficiency. It's about efficiency as much as it is about restoring accountability. And this time, actions are going to speak louder than words. And I'm excited to get started in January.
I love all of this, Vivek. I really do. But wow, what a year and a half you've had. As we go, a little self-reflection from you. What a year and a half you've had.
I mean, what a journey it's been. and I'm incredibly grateful to this country. I mean, I was 37 years old when I became the youngest person ever to run for U.S. president. I've lived the American dream. It's only possible in this country.
That's right.
And our goal, Elon Musk, take him as somebody who's an immigrant to this country, came from nothing, became the most successful capitalist in history. We want to work together to pass that American dream on to our kids. That's what motivates us, and I think we're going to do it.
This great nation is lucky to have you. Thank you very much, Vivek.
Thank you.
Vivek Ramaswamy.
This is a time before the election, and in many communities, and you could feel it. You could feel their concern, saying, "Where is FEMA?" Now, they were there in bits and pieces, but with the real evidence that we have now with this whistleblower, we've got to get to the bottom of this. This is very disturbing. In the time of need.
That's North Carolina Senator Ted Budd with me on Fox Business's Morning with Maria this week on allegations that FEMA officials directed employees to avoid hurricane victims who supported President-elect Trump. And Biden—
They're obsessed with it, Sparkle. Democrats love to try to accuse conservatives or Republicans or anybody that supports Trump of being Epstein people, and it's like, oh, Donald Trump was Epstein's best friend. It's like, sure, dude, sure. If you believe that, you're like a pathetic loser.
Past their homes with Trump signs on their properties. The order came to light after a message obtained by the Daily Wire showed fired FEMA supervisor Marnell Washington instructing workers in Lake Placid, Florida, to avoid all homes with Trump signs on their lawns after Hurricane Milton. Now, Washington has turned whistleblower against FEMA, saying her actions were consistent with FEMA guidelines that were also used by other teams, and she's being set up to take the fall. FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell is expected to testify this upcoming Tuesday in front of the House Oversight Committee investigating where the directive to not help Trump supporters actually came from. Joining me now ahead of the committee hearing is the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman James Comer, who is also the author of the new book, All the President's Money, which examines President Biden and his family's numerous business deals. That book will be out on January 14th. Mr. Chairman, good to have you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria.
What do you know so far in your investigation of where this order came from? Did they actually tell employees, don't help anyone with a Trump sign on their lawn?
It does appear that they told employees that, and it appears that this is not an isolated incident. We believe this is a pattern, and this is a pattern.
Wow, that should be headline breaking news right there. This is a pattern that FEMA wouldn't help Trump supporters in the aftermath of natural disasters. That's a scandal of the highest order. This should disgrace the Biden presidency as everything else has.
Pattern dating back for the 3 previous years, all throughout the Biden-Harris administration. FEMA is supposed to be a nonpartisan, good government agency that comes in to help Americans in their desperate time of need. But what we have here with FEMA is what we've seen with many other government agencies under Biden-Harris, a weaponized agency that discriminates against conservatives.
I mean, this is happening just a few months after, or a few weeks after, we learned that some of the FEMA money was diverted to help illegals, house them, care for these people who've come into the country, breaking the law, coming to this country illegally. What's going on at FEMA or all these other agencies, as you say, in terms of their own priorities?
Well, we're going to ask the director that exact question. We all heard reports when the hurricane happened that FEMA was diverting money from the hurricane.
I think that's a bit of a stretch, Altair, personally, but yeah, you could say that.
Assistance to help pay for the transportation and all the luxuries for the illegals that were crossing the border. But the FEMA denied that. They said that they were administering the money. The money was coming from somewhere else. Well, Maria, Congress never appropriated any money for this. We want to know exactly where the money was coming from that FEMA was distributing. We want to know exactly to the penny how much they distributed and who gave them the authority to distribute that money to the illegals. It's almost like they were putting a priority priority on illegals. We know where Republicans and where Trump supporters ranked in their priority. It was below dead last. They didn't even want to go and help those people. So we've got a lot of questions for FEMA. FEMA is an agency that's never been known for its speed or efficiency, but here they are now with various reports of discrimination, with a whistleblower that's come forward. And we hope more whistleblowers are about to come forward. So this should be a very good, informative hearing, and something that I hope the Trump administration will be watching so they can change on day one.
So have you learned anything more from that whistleblower?
Well, we've been in communication with other members who have talked with other FEMA employees about incidents of other hurricanes that happened in other parts of Florida and in other states. And it appears that this is a pattern of misbehavior by FEMA employees who were instructed, do not help people in affluent neighborhoods, do not help people with Trump signs in their yards or Trump flags or anything that would give the impression that they were not a supporter of the Democrat machine.
Well,
Wow.
I mean, you've already impeached, recommended impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas. Is he also overseeing this? I mean, he was overseeing the 10 million plus people who've come into this country illegally. He was overseeing the Secret Service when we know that there were failures there in terms of protecting President Trump. Where is the accountability? And will we ever see any accountability for any of this?
Well, I think the American people spoke last week when they elected Donald Trump by such a big margin. They flipped the Senate and they kept a Republican majority in the House. They want accountability, and they realize the only way for true accountability is to fire all these people. And obviously, Trump will go in on day one and fire Mayorkas, but it doesn't need to stop there. In the last segment with Vivek and with what Elon Musk is going to do, this is so important that Congress work with these individuals and work with the Trump administration to drain the swamp, to get rid of the deep state, to put public servants in that are going to get the backs of the American taxpayers regardless of their political ideology.
Congressman, we're talking about President Trump's nominees earlier in my panel with those two senators, and I want to get your take on Matt Gaetz. He's a colleague of yours. He's been recommended and nominated by President Trump to be the Attorney General. Will you support him?
Well, I'm in the House, so I don't get a vote on it. But Matt Gaetz, Mike Johnson, and I all came in together. We were in the same freshman class. We've been very close throughout our 8 years in Congress. Everyone will tell you that Matt Gaetz is very intelligent. He's been right about all the wrongdoing that he has pointed out to the American people with respect to the Department of Justice, with respect to the intelligence agencies. I think Gaetz deserves an opportunity, and hopefully the Senate will give him a fair shot when they do the confirmation process.
Yeah, I mean, I know, obviously, you don't get a vote, but I wanted to get a sense from you since you are a colleague, and as you say, you were in the freshman class together. Real quick on your book, again, here we want to see accountability. Congressman, will that take place in the 119th Congress?
I hope so. With respect to my book, it itemizes every single penny that the Bidens took in from our adversaries around the world. It details exactly how they laundered it through the various shell companies. It lists individual deep state actors. It explains how the federal government and the deep state coordinates and colludes with the mainstream media to disinform their audience. So I'm real proud of the book. It goes into detail, and hopefully it'll be a blueprint for the Trump administration to drain the swamp.
All right. Thanks very much, Congressman. We've got Donald Trump Jr. coming up after this break, and we appreciate you joining me. Thank you, sir.
That my experience at the RNC has really shown me, you know, serving the American people. And if I were tapped for this, serving my home state now of Florida, it's a great honor and a great responsibility, obviously. But I would love to be able to go forward and do more. If this is something I'm asked to do, I would seriously consider it. But I have yet to hear from Governor DeSantis, so we'll see what happens.
And that is the RNC co-chair, Lara Trump, with me on Mornings with Maria this week on her interest in stepping into Senator Marco Rubio's seat in the Senate, should he be confirmed as U.S. Secretary of State, the position to be appointed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Meanwhile, President-elect Trump is expected to sign several executive orders in his first 100 days to secure the border and tap into America's energy capacity to rein in inflation and spark economic growth. In 2021, President Biden issued 42 executive orders during his first 100 days in the Oval Office, undoing many of Trump's first-term policies, including construction of the southern border wall and the Remain in Mexico program. Joining me now with President Trump's plans in the first 100 days and beyond is Trump Organization Executive Vice President and President Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr. Don, great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Maria. Good to be here.
First off, do you want to see your sister as Senator Trump?
Listen, I think it'd be great. I think she understands our base. She understands the movement. You see what's going on in Florida. I mean, it is a solid red state. We flipped counties that we lost by 30 and 40 points back in 2016. They're now positive Trump. Miami-Dade, we went from minus 30 to plus 10.
TLS, what's up, TLS?
Republican. I mean, I think that's a mandate if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. I know that you've played a major role in helping to shape President Trump's cabinet. I'd like to know, what is the common theme behind these choices, if there is one?
I think I think the reality this time is we actually know what we're doing. We actually know who the good guys and the bad guys are. We know who the guys are fake. They will deliver on his promises. They will deliver on his message. They are not people who think they know better as unelected bureaucrats. And so a big part of that process is just something that we didn't understand in 2016, where he came to Washington, D.C. He had no experience. He didn't know any of the 4,000 people that make up the Plum Book, which are the presidential appointees. So now we have a great understanding of that, and we can have a cabinet that is so powerful in delivering the America First message that the American people clearly voted for on November 5th.
Will you have a specific role in the administration? How do you see as the best way to help serve your father and the nation?
No, I don't want to roll in the administration. I want to be very active until January 20th. I want to make sure the people that surround him are the greatest people we can possibly assemble, the smartest minds. You know, when you look at it, not just this cabinet, but the people who are on the outside, whether it's Elon, Bobby Kennedy, obviously being in the cabinet on the health side, Vivek.
All right, that is Mornings with Maria. Man, this thing looks like it popped. This thing looks like it worked. That looks like a pretty good... That looks like a pretty good one of these. Let me do a couple clips and then we'll watch Face the Nation. What do you mean the worst choices always become front runners? Oh, like Cornyn? Oh, I don't know. Like John Cornyn? Yeah, I see what you're talking about. Because the Senate, man, is freaking, it's establishment. The Senate is full of establishment Oh man, I watch these clips and remember saying this stuff and was always just kind of chuckle. Until July of 2026, until July 4th of 2026. It's going to be an entire, like, almost a full year of celebrations all across the country, multiple different things, parties all the time. I don't know why I didn't have any energy for that stream, but I sound like I'm about to die.
And we turn now to Democratic Senator-elect.
Dude, it's going to have to be, I guarantee you it's going to be John Thune. I think it's going to be John Thune. My worst case scenario is John Cornyn. If it's John Cornyn, that's a disaster. John Cornyn's worse than Mitch McConnell. I honestly think John Cornyn would be worse than Mitch McConnell. Wow, so I called it that it was going to be Thune 5 days ago before it was Thune before the vote. Dude, I've been predicting everything correct. Did you guys see that I predicted the election results 100% correct? Did you guys see that I predicted the election results 100% correct? Actually, if you go on to my Twitter account and you can go back and you can find, here's my tweet from November 4th, 2024, nailing the presidential election results exactly 100% correct, even down to the one electoral vote in Maine and one electoral vote in Nebraska. You didn't know. If you didn't know. And then there's another John Thune.
For us, thanks so much.
celebration in DC or whatever, Trump is going to have like there's going to be like traveling exhibits, and like the Garden of American Heroes is going to be like a traveling exhibit of statues of American heroes that are going to be like going around to different cities around the country and stuff, is my understanding. I remember that was 5 days ago. Clip.
About it. In fact, I asked him whether or not Trump is supporting his bid to remain as Speaker of the House, and Mike Johnson told me, yes, he is. And I asked him about any concerns that he may have.
Wow, Donald Trump supporting Mike Johnson for Speaker. All right, let me just do a couple more here.
He committed crimes and violent crimes, less than half that of native-born Americans. It spread to the hurricane relief, spreading lies that hurricane relief dollars were being diverted to migrants.
That Alan Lichtman guy, dude. Oh, that Alan. I kind of want to keep doing these clips because that Alan Lichtman guy is such a clown. It's all right. Let's just do that. That's plenty for now. Let's see if we got Face the Nation. Oh, here's George Stephanopoulos.
This Week with George Stephanopoulos starts right now.
The retribution begins.
We're going to clean out the corrupt, broken, and failing.
The retribution begins. Oh my.
The president-elect sparking alarm with controversial cabinet nominees, including a firebrand Fox TV host to lead the Department of Defense.
I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles.
Noted vaccine skeptic Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health and Human Services Secretary.
He wants to make people healthy. It's driven him pretty wild over the last number of years.
And ardent Trump loyalist, now former Congressman Matt Gaetz, to run the Justice Department.
He's got a real steep hill to climb to get lots of votes, including mine.
Democratic Senator-elect Alyssa Slotkin responds to the nominations, plus former CDC Director Richard Besser, former prosecutor Preet Bharara, and analysis from our Powerhouse Roundtable. Plus,
we pay some of the highest wages for farm workers in the nation, right here in California, and they won't come out.
We travel to California farmland to see what Trump's massive deportation plans could mean for farmers and the nation's food supply. Texas Republican Tony Gonzalez joins us for reaction.
From ABC News, it's This Week. Here now, Martha Raddatz.
Good morning and welcome to This Week.
Nice,
Donald Trump
TLS.
is wasting no time naming the team he wants around him in a second term. In rapid-fire fashion, he announced a series of nominees this week to fill the White House and lead key cabinet departments. Many of them were right by Trump's side last night to attend a UFC fight at Madison Square Garden in New York. Among them, controversial picks like the world's richest man, Elon Musk, and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, who will lead a new Department of Government Efficiency, an amorphous role aimed at slashing federal spending. While that move raised a lot of intrigue, other picks have raised eyebrows, to say the least, and some outright opposition, including Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence, despite her critics claiming she has sympathetic views towards Russia. Fox News personality Pete Hegseth to lead the Department of Defense, despite him having no experience running an organization near the scale of the U.S. military. Matt Gaetz.
How many people have experience running things the size of the U.S. military? I would venture to guess nobody. How silly. How degrading to an American hero, Pete Hegseth.
Prompting him to step down from Congress, a move that ended an ethics probe into alleged illicit drug use and whether he paid for sex with a minor. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead Health and Human Services, a massive role overseeing 13 major health agencies such as the CDC, NIH, and FDA by someone who has publicized disproven conspiracy theories about vaccines and COVID-19 treatments. That
This is hilarious. These people are freaking out.
pick drew rebukes from top health officials, including former Biden White House COVID-19 response coordinator, Dr. Ashish Jha, who said, "I worry a lot about going backwards just at a time when we have made so much progress in American medicine." Dr. Paul Offit, a vaccine specialist at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, responding that the notion that a science denialist would head an agency that is built on science is a frightening prospect. And former acting CDC director, Dr. Richard Besser, saying point blank that I think it would be extremely dangerous to have RFK Jr. as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And Dr. Besser joins me now. It's good to see you, Dr. Besser, this morning. You have spent your career in medicine, in science, 30 years as a pediatrician, 13 years with the CDC. I have to say I've never seen you so outraged. So tell us what kind of power and influence you think RFK Jr. would have.
You know, Martha, I am outraged because lives are at stake here. The head of Health and Human Services touches programs that affect every single life in our country. I've been focusing mainly on the public health impacts. You know, as you know, I'm a pediatrician. I practiced pediatrics for more than 30 years, and there's nothing that I've done for my patients that I know has more positive impact than getting them vaccinated fully and on time. And to have someone leading HHS who is one of the biggest deniers of vaccines in our country would undermine the confidence in that program and likely would cost lives.
You know, he said he does not intend to get rid of all vaccines, said he and his children had been vaccinated before the COVID vaccine, which they did not take. So would he get rid of them? Do you think he's lying about that?
Well, it's not a matter of getting rid of them. No vaccine is 100% protective. When you send your kid to school fully vaccinated, you don't want to have to worry that the child sitting next to them, that their parents chose not to vaccinate their child. Because once the level of vaccination in a classroom drops below something like 95%, it's a setup for diseases like measles or whooping cough to spread. If there's a child in the classroom who has an immune problem, that child is at risk. So it's not a matter of saying, oh, yes, you have access to your vaccines. It's pushing the idea that vaccines should be something that is totally up to the individual. We have a social contract in our country. There are things we do for our own health, but there are things we do that are good for ourselves.
Wow. Did he literally just say that this is dangerous, that he's pushing the idea that a vaccine is totally up to the individual? These people don't believe in my body, my choice one bit. This guy just looks evil to me now.
Our families and our communities, and vaccination falls into that category, and having someone who denies that in that role is extremely dangerous.
He has not only denied some things in that role, or potentially in that role, but he has said there is some sort of autism that is a result of these vaccines, totally not proven.
Yeah, you know, this was a question that was asked and addressed decades ago. And to continue to lift that up is a cruel thing to do. We need to, as a nation, address chronic diseases in children. And one of the dangerous things about RFK Jr. is that there are bits of things he says that are true, and they're mixed in. And it makes it really hard to sort out what things you should follow because they're based on fact and which things are not. We should address chronic diseases. Autism is one of those. And spend money trying to understand what are the causes of autism and how can you address that? But keep lifting up the idea that it has something to do with vaccination is really a cruel thing to do.
And he does push back.
I really hate the way these leftists say it's cruel. Things are cruel. Oh, when you believe in freedom or when you want transparency, it's cruel. It's cruel. Oh, shut up with your cruel word.
Pharmaceuticals, and he's gotten praise for that. He does have interest in battling chronic childhood diseases, improving childhood nutrition. So do you believe something good could come out of it?
Well, you know, this is my point. There's some things here that are worth working on. You know, if we're looking at the school lunch program in America, 30 million children get more than half of their calories from that program. It would be a wonderful thing to make that the best.
Oh, for sure, Pro-Law. For sure, Pro-Law. Really good point, Pro-Law. I agree. Bad Boys 45 in the house. What up?
Best school lunch program possible. Give money to schools so that they have kitchens and can make fresh food. Get the corporations out of the discussion so they're not pushing processed food. That would be a terrific thing. Getting big business out of the decisions of government health making, that would be a great thing. But when you mix it in with solutions that are based on falsehoods, or some are and some aren't, it's very confusing and could have dire consequences.
Okay, thanks for joining us this morning, Dr. Besser. Trump's pick of Matt Gaetz may face the biggest uphill battle for confirmation. So let's bring in former federal prosecutor Preet Bharara on that. Good morning.
That sounds amazing, Bad Boys. I would like a pot of coffee right now, frankly.
You, Preet. I just first of all want your reaction to the nomination.
Look, you begin with the premise that every president, within reason, is entitled to the nominees of his choice, the team of his choice, the cabinet of his choice.
Thank you. Yes, Donald Trump is entitled to the cabinet of his choice. The American people put him there. Trump gets to choose whoever he wants. Who are all these people that want to try to second guess Trump now? No, Trump won. We support him. He's America's president. He gets to choose his people. Thank you for admitting that. ABC this week, dirtballs.
But there are limits, particularly with the Justice Department, which is such an important role. The American public is also entitled to someone who has the proper experience, background, seasoning, judgment, etc. And ideally, you would want someone at the AG.
Holy cow, Bad Boys. I already woke up this morning at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., streamed for like 2 hours plus. Got off, did some other stuff, came back, streamed for another hour, got off, ate, took a nap, got back up, streamed now for another hour.
Level, whose experience with the Justice Department goes beyond being investigated by the Justice Department. Ideally, you'd want someone who has criminal law experience, who has litigation experience, who has an extensive amount of legal experience, and then most importantly, you want to have somebody who can pass a basic background check. You know, Matt Gaetz has had a bipartisan investigation of him with respect to sex trafficking and other sexual misconduct going on in the House. That was his employer, essentially. And if you resign 2 days before the report comes out, as we lawyers like to say it, you can draw an adverse inference that the result of that investigation is not good. So I think it's a problematic nomination for a variety of reasons, and that's why you're hearing reports of such a bipartisan opposition.
And you heard House Speaker Mike Johnson, though, praise the choice in saying this ethics report should not be released. Obviously, there are things leaking out about that report already that you mentioned.
Look, the proof is in the fact that somebody who has a job, an important job, as a member of the House of Representatives, is leaving that job ostensibly for the purpose of preventing that report from coming out. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that the results are probably very bad. Now, whether or not the report becomes fully public to everyone, that's up to the House. But at a minimum, I think the American people would want the senators who are in a position to advise and consent and determine the outcome of the nomination to have the benefit of that report in deciding whether or not this person gets this incredibly important job.
Gosh, so this guy's just on the Sunday shows to spew Democrat talking points. Thanks, bro. Thanks. Real helpful. Real helpful.
Information starts with Fox News and conservative media.
Starts with Fox News. That's why your keys were wrong, and that's why this is so different from 160 years of history, is because of Fox News disinformation. This guy's just your average Democrat hack, isn't he? I don't even know if I'm spelling Alan Lichtman's name right.
As I said, things could go wrong. There could be unprecedented events that change the pattern of 160 years of history. That's what happened here. Two things. Number one, disinformation. We've always had disinformation, but disinformation has exploded to an unprecedented...
Literally just laughing in their face. All right, let me just do one more.
A pretty deep explanation.
Oh, I want to hear it. So I just want to say off the top, you know, you're a friend of mine, and I don't like people coming after you, especially after the fact.
Oh my gosh, look at this. Look at how these guys have to go on live TV and explain why they were so wrong. Oh. All right, sorry about that.
In no other context, whether it's a TV station or a law firm or a university, would somebody
It is Altair
for something in the prior job
It is Altair
and quits that job to prevent the release of damaging information, get the next job? You would never hear of it in any context ever, and it probably shouldn't happen here.
And J.D. Vance has said this is the most important job after the president and vice president. Let's listen to Gates in his own words, how he would approach the job.
I don't care if it takes every second of our time and every ounce of our energy. We either get this government back on our side or we defund and get rid of, abolish the FBI, CDC, ATF, DOJ, every last one of them, if they do not come to heel.
Again, you talk about a president being able to choose whomever he wants. The voters chose Donald Trump. They know this is what he wants. So if he is confirmed, how much power would he have to do what he says?
He would have a tremendous amount of power, and he has the backing of a president who is a flamethrower himself, a bomb thrower himself, who's choosing a bomb thrower for that job. And again, the president has a right to substantial deference, but not complete and total deference. There's the United States Senate. They're accountable to the public as well, and they have a role to advise and consent. And again, not ideal to have someone in that top job who has spoken in that bomb-throwing kind of way about the dismantlement of the central law enforcement agency.
Yes, it is. That's who we want in that job, who has spoken of dismantling these agencies. Yeah, that's exactly who the American people want. That's why we put Trump there, you idiot.
These that are within the control of the Justice Department, including the FBI.
And just finally, and quickly if you can, what are you hearing from career folks in the Justice Department? One Justice Department official told ABC News there would be mass resignation.
A Trump presidential victory mean for Ukraine? So there's a lot of components to this, and believe it or not all of them are bad. Now, to start, my background may look a little different here. I'm in San Francisco right now. I was just at the Aero Systems West headquarters. For those of you who don't know, I work for AeroMedLab, a company that uses AI-powered drones to deliver whole blood to wounded soldiers. It's some really cool tech. And we are an AI company, not a hardware company. So now that we have our third prototype platform, we should be ready to start testing with the Army by March, hopefully. So if you are an accredited investor, give me a call. We're looking to raise $1.6 million in pre-seed. Now, regarding President Trump and Ukraine, I think there are three factors that you have to take into consideration. The first factor is that President Trump claimed that he would make some kind of deal with President Putin and President Zelensky within 24 hours of him taking office. Now, that's possible, but I don't think it's all that likely that they'll come to a deal, and here's why. Some people have said that a Ukraine deal will mean that the lines are frozen in place and Ukraine won't get back any of its lost territory. But believe it or not, that's not actually a deal that benefits Russia. Now, I've said this before, Russia needs all of Ukraine. And the reason is that Russia is not very defensible. Russia has this massive land border with Europe, and there's absolutely nothing, no mountains, no large rivers, just tundra between Europe and Moscow. So it's this natural invasion route. So you take Ukraine, and then you turn Ukraine into a client state, kind of like Belarus. And now you have the Carpathian Mountains in the east as a natural invasion barrier. Then you wait 5 years, 10 years, build up your forces again. Then you take the Baltics, and then you take...
Wait, why is he an idiot, TLS? Just curious. I don't know anything about him. PM, what's up, PM? Happy Sunday.
Poland. Once you take Poland and you turn it into a client state, you have the Sudetys Mountains to the south of Poland. And now, instead of defending this big, long border with Russia, you only have to defend like a 200-mile border. So Russia has not completed its objectives yet. They have no reason to come to a deal because they have to take Ukraine. This was never about Donetsk and Luhansk, and people in Luhansk aren't allowed to speak Russian anymore. This is about taking all of Ukraine to help start phase 1 of that defensive barrier. There is a second factor. Russia needs to be in a perpetual state of war right now. Its economy is on a war footing. Literally, everything Russia is producing is geared either towards making weapons or extracting oil from the ground to sell to China so they can get the hard currency to pay the workers to make the weapons. And if the war ends within 24 hours, Russia's economy collapses. President Putin knows this, and he knows that if their economy collapses, he will be ousted from power. Rule number 1.
Wait, why will their economy collapse if he makes a deal?
Workers to make the weapons or extracting oil from the ground to sell to China so they can get the hard currency to pay the workers to make the weapons. And if the war ends within 24 hours, Russia's economy collapses. President Putin knows this, and he knows that if their economy collapses, he
lost me on like why their economy collapses. I mean, I was agreeing with most of what he was saying there for most of the video. I mean, I think his overall point is that like Trump is not going to be able to get a deal done because Russia doesn't really benefit Russia right now to freeze the front lines and do a ceasefire and do a I don't know. I could see a lot of benefits for Putin for that. It's like I could see a whole lot of benefits to Russia.
If he gets sworn in, could that actually be the goal, to clean house?
You know, they've talked about cleaning house. In some ways, it's ironic that Donald Trump and his allies have talked about the deep state and want to get rid of the deep state. It sounds like they want to get rid of one deep state and implement another. People who are aligned.
No, that's the exact opposite. We want to fire 75% of the federal workforce. You jerk. That's not what we're talking about. God, this guy's just so dishonest.
With them, I think it'd be unfortunate if lots of people left the Justice Department and left it to political folks to fill the ranks.
Rolla Tomasi, Yangtze Tam. What's up, guys?
Most of the work of the Justice Department is not political, is not ideological. Staffing decisions are not made on a political basis. The American people deserve fair and impartial justice, and it's a vanishingly small number of cases at the Justice Department that we talk about on television that involve political figures. And you want that work to be done in a fair and neutral way.
Okay, I thank you for your time this morning, Preet.
Thanks, Martha.
What a joke that guy is.
And for the bigger picture on Trump's national security picks, I'm joined now in studio by Democratic Senator-elect Elissa Slotkin, who pulled off a narrow win in Michigan, a battleground state that...
Boom, Elissa Slotkin in the house.
...helped elect Donald Trump. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. You have experience across the national security space, including defense and the CIA. So let's start with the nomination of Pete Hegseth for the head of Department of Defense. This morning, his lawyer acknowledging he paid off a woman who accused him of sexual assault in 2017, but he says he is an innocent victim, although his lawyers say witnesses saw him visibly intoxicated at the time of this incident. What's your reaction to that and to his nomination?
I mean, I think in general, I'm a senator-elect, and advice and consent from the Senate is part of our constitutional process. So I'm going to try and meet with everybody, hear them out. But I also am a former CIA officer and Defense Department official. I know just how important these jobs are, not just for who gets what in Washington, but for the actual security of people in the United States. And, I was one of the first employees of the DNI's office. I worked at the Pentagon. And so to me, you have to have the...
So this chick is basically deep state. So Democrat senators are basically straight from the deep state to now becoming Democrat senators. Wow.
right character, you have to have the right qualifications, you have to go through an actual vetting process. To me, that is the thing that is going to be critical in deciding who should be supported as these big cabinet level officials.
He has also said, Hegseth, in his book and in public appearances, that he does not think women should be in combat roles. They are currently in combat roles. How much power, if he is confirmed, would he have to change?
They're acting as if that's the biggest deal on earth. What a joke.
That, and what do you think those statements right now do to the morale of women in the Pentagon?
Well, I can tell you because I was at the Pentagon.
Kiswan, what up, Kiswan?
On Thursday, and there is absolute hallway constant chatter and conversation and concern from senior women officers, but also I've heard from folks who I've recommended to service academies, young women who are just starting out their career saying, am I going to actually be able to accomplish what I want to accomplish here? So I don't think it's an understatement to say that there is real stress in the force right now.
What a joke. You're telling me, oh, the military's all scared and we don't want Trump, the military. Give me a break. The military's so relieved to have Trump and Hegseth on board. These people are on planet Mars and trying to gaslight the American people. This is evil we're watching here.
But there is a lot of power. The Secretary of Defense is designed to be a very important job. So who we put in there is extremely critical, again, to our security and to who we are as a nation. So there is deep concern, but also...
Oh, yes, Ket. Oh, very, very concerned, Kiswan. Yes, the lame duck sessions of Congress and lame duck presidents. That's typically when the worst of the worst things happen in the United States. So, yeah, absolutely.
So a deep opportunity to sort of make sure we are putting only qualified people in these jobs.
Hegseth has also said that any general that was involved in any of the DEI woke crap has got to go. Do you expect Donald Trump to fire top generals who he considers woke, or those close to former chairman Mark Milley?
I mean, I don't think you have to interpret. Yeah, I don't think you have to interpret anything. I think they've been very clear that they're putting together some sort of panel that's going to look at generals, people who have served their nation their entire lives over multiple administrations, Democrat and Republican, in combat. They are now openly talking about dismissing them like some sort of kangaroo court. You can imagine the stress in the Pentagon about that, but also on the future of who we are as a military, right? Our military and the role of the military is in the Constitution for a reason, and I think we're really at risk of politicizing the military in a way that we can't put the genie back in the bottle.
But there have been issues with recruiting of late, and Hegseth talks about that.
Sure. I mean, there's issues with recruiting. I think you talk to any business leader, there's issues with recruiting as well. There's just a high demand signal, but I don't think that showing that you can be summarily fired in this system is a way to increase recruiting. I will just take note that
he said it would attract normal males if we...
Well, his idea of normal may be different. We want a diverse force. Right now, the military...
No, we don't want a diverse force. We don't want diversity, you jerk. That's why we just elected Trump.
The most diverse institutions in the world. So their officer corps should reflect that diversity. And that's just not me saying it. That's the Supreme Court of the United States. When they went after diversity issues at our campuses, they excluded our service academies, West Point, the Naval Academy, because they understood that a diverse workforce, a diverse officer corps is a national security issue in the United States.
Let me ask you this, then, and I know what you said at the top, but from what you already know, would you vote against his nomination?
I'm sure no.
I'm not going to do that.
Sure
I'm a
no.
new senator-elect. I'm not going to set a standard where I want to meet with people. I want to talk with people. Some of these people I already served with in Congress. I still want the opportunity to have that conversation because it's written in the Constitution. That's what we should be doing.
Okay, let's talk about what we already know about Tulsi Gabbard. You served with her as well. Is she qualified for that job from what you know right now?
Again,
your own experience at the CIA, she's going to be director of DNI.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was literally one of the first employees when we stood up the Director of National Intelligence Office, and I have real concerns. Again, people have to be of a certain character and certain qualification. Because if you have the wrong people in these jobs, it's not just a parlor game.
What concerns you about her? And certainly
We know it's not just a parlor game. Nobody said it was.
There's been reporting about her past statements about Russia, about Ukraine.
I just need to know that the people who are in these jobs are not.
I had no idea Alyssa Slotkin was this bad. Wow, Michigan elected this woman as senator. What the hell is wrong with you, Michigan? How the hell did you elect some woman like this as senator? What a disgusting joke Michigan has played on America.
Not going to be guided by politics and what someone tells them they think they should be seeing in the intelligence or in the defense picture, but what is actually the truth on the ground. Speaking truth to power is one of the most important things the intelligence community does. And if you have someone in there who feels more beholden to telling the president what he wants to hear, I got a real problem with that.
Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. That really seems like a very conventional pick. You know Marco Rubio. You've seen what he's done over the years on foreign affairs. What do you think a change might be there if he is confirmed?
I mean, I think, again, he has been a very public person about his views on foreign affairs. And I think we heard from across the country that there's a lot of different views in this country right now about America's role in the world. Do we think we should have that leadership role as we've had after World War II and on? Or do we want to isolate and say, you know what, we're fine with someone else, Russian leadership, Chinese leadership in the world? I know where I stand on that, right? We're not perfect abroad. We're not perfect, but man, I'd rather have American leadership over Chinese or Russian leadership any day of the week. And so I hope that despite the impulses maybe of President-elect Trump, that we have Marco Rubio as a more traditional pick who's going to understand that American role, that leadership role is important.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time. Coming up, what will happen to the nation's food supply with Trump's promise of a mass deportation? I traveled to California's farmland to find out. We're back in 2 minutes.
As a guy who spent 34 years deporting illegal aliens, I got a message to the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden's releasing our country in violation of federal law. You better start packing now.
Former ICE acting director and President-elect Donald Trump's incoming border czar Tom Homan speaking at the Republican convention this summer. After record border crossings in the first 3 years of the Biden administration, Trump has promised mass deportations on day one.
Boom! Heck yeah! Heck yeah! That's what America voted for. That's great news. Yeah! That's how this should be being reported.
Starting with those with criminal records, a process that could be long and costly. But fears of deportation have worried migrant workers across America, as well as farmers who rely on their labor. And we saw that up close this week.
Oh, really? Those farmers that rely on their labor? Okay, if those are people that are knowingly hiring illegals, they're criminals too. The businesses that knowingly hire illegals are criminals too.
In the Central Valley.
These people are so in love with criminals in just every sense of the way.
Of California. California's Central Valley is without question one of the most vital agricultural regions in America. 400 miles of rich farmland from Redding to Bakersfield, producing $17 billion worth of crops.
Glory, what's up, Glory?
Of the nation's food supply.
My farm here in Central California grows melons like cantaloupes and watermelons. We also grow
Yeah, exactly, Num. It's not bad. Deportation is literally sending people home. It's like all we're doing is sending them back to their home. Like, that is not a bad thing to do. That's actually a nice thing to do. In fact, I like it when people take me home. It's like, this is a good thing, not a bad thing.
Almonds, we grow tomatoes and cherries.
And to help grow and harvest those crops, many farmers here rely on undocumented workers. The Department of Agriculture estimates that about half of the hired crop workers do not have legal status. That is estimated to be more than 330,000 workers in the Central Valley alone. Joe Del Bar-
They're literally glorifying crime. This is unbelievable to watch this. ABC News, a formerly respected media outlet, literally glorifying the felony crime, the federal felony crime of hiring illegals and of illegally immigrating here. Wow, just glorifying crime left and right.
Muskie started his farm here in 1985.
We do have concerns because our labor is barely where we need to do. We can't afford a labor shortage. Back during Obama, we had a labor shortage, and there were at times where we actually lost some crop. We left melons in the field unharvested, and we lost them.
I think people will look and say, but wait a minute, they're Americans who are unemployed. Why can't you just hire them?
They don't want to come out here and work in this extreme conditions, 100+ degree temperatures, dust, hard work.
What if you paid them more?
It doesn't matter.
I view this guy as a criminal. If this guy's hiring illegal aliens and then crying that he can't hire illegal aliens, I view this guy as a criminal because he is.
We pay some of the highest wages for farm workers in the nation right here in California, and they won't come out. In California, we grow about 50% of the fruits and vegetables and nuts for the country. And any shortage of food like that is going to impact everybody in the nation, because not only will food be less available, it'll be
this
more
guy's a dirtball.
Expensive.
Manuel Cunha Jr. runs the Nisei Farmers League, a trade organization representing farmers and farm workers in the Fresno area. He says Trump's promise to deport all undocumented migrants would disrupt the entire country.
If you took away my workforce, you wouldn't eat. If you go into the San Joaquin Valley and you start doing what you're saying, it's over. The country will stop. It'll literally stop because the food system won't move.
And like Joe Del...
Give me a flippin' break. Yeah, that's why you can... Oh my gosh, these people are so outlandish and just ridiculous and just ignoring obvious things.
Bosky, he insists these undocumented farm workers are not taking jobs that would otherwise go to American citizens.
I don't care what you pay them. I don't care if you pay them $26 an hour. It ain't going to happen. They're not going to.
I know lots of teenagers and 20-year-olds, and I know lots of Americans, young Americans that would love to go work on a farm for $26 an hour to start.
Get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, drive to the field, and pick fruit.
Cunha wants the Trump administration to give those who have been in the country hard at work a break.
We need to figure out how we handle those folks versus the ones that are criminals, child molesters, whatever you may want to call this, been coming across the border. They've worked here for 30 years. Now you're going to throw them out of the country.
Xochitl Nunez came to the U.S. 26 years ago to escape domestic abuse in Mexico. An activist for immigration reform, Xochitl provides for her family pruning crops, landscaping, and harvesting thanks to a work permit. But she's trying to obtain legal permanent status.
Sí tengo miedo yo.
She worries now, not just about herself, but those workers without...
26 years in the United States and she still doesn't speak a lick of English? Not really your ideal picture of an immigrant there, ABC. Thanks us very much for playing.
Without any legal status. I'm scared, she says, but we have to keep going. And yet deporting undocumented workers in California is complicated. The state enacted a measure in 2017 that prevents state resources from being used for federal immigration enforcement. And while that law varies by city and county, California is the sanctuary city capital of America, with dozens of cities and counties protecting undocumented residents from arrest based solely on their immigration status. San Jose, California's third largest city, is one of them. Mayor Matt Mahan defends the protections despite...
Wow, so these people are straight up a criminal organization as a city and running a criminal city. Wow.
Donald Trump's vow to get rid of them.
We have
the vast majority of our residents here, including our undocumented residents here, are law-abiding. In fact, the data shows that undocumented residents are less likely to commit crime. They're more likely to be working. They're paying
Correct, Altair. Yep. Correct, Num.
taxes. They have a stake in our society.
But the mayor fully realizes that because of the Biden administration's record-breaking border crossings, the majority of Americans now support mass deportation, 56% in an October ABC Ipsos.
Yeah, TLS. I've heard a lot of the illegal aliens are moving to Canada. Just go straight to Canada because, yeah, I saw Justin Trudeau is even trying to announce different immigration policy because even he knows that all of these, 30 million illegal aliens, they could be headed to Canada. So you guys better get ready.
Poll.
I think it's hard to get people to support the notion of a pathway to citizenship when you haven't committed to securing the border.
Our thanks to the mayor and
Man. Alan, I posted a YouTube short. I posted a YouTube short. Alan Lichtman should be come after. Because it's all about, like, people are coming after you. People are coming after you. And so I posted a YouTube short. Alan Lichtman should be come after.
Long for Harris to lose.
So,
what an idiot, dude. Look at that. He had the short-term economy and long-term economy as Democrat issues, positive for Democrat. Yeah, that Alan Lichtman guy is such a joke. He said the economic keys pointed to a Democrat win. It's like, dude, okay, I agree that the economy is a key.
Answer every time, but here's what's
It's going to be.
Here we go. Oh, loser predictor, wrong predictor. Political Nostradamus picks 2024 election completely wrong. Oh, here we go. Alan Lichtman. Here you go. Explain it away, bro. How are these? I'm not getting any. None of these are getting traction on YouTube. I don't know why.
meaning the liberals want it more left, the centrists want it more center, yada, yada. I want to play Bernie Sanders, who on the one hand has been...
It's all just kind of boring to me, like watching these Democrats.
And looking at Kamala.
Altair, what's up? You got a laugh for the day? Good. All right, let's see what you got.
So you asked, are there any places that the vice president is overperforming Joe Biden in 2020? So we could show you that as well. We just bring that out here. Harris overperforming 2020.
Holy smokes!
There you go. So let this go away and see if there's anything on the east side there.
Oh!
Literally.
Remember that one? Remember that one, guys? Remember that one? Oh, that one should go virus. That's a short that should go virus.
At the vice.
Oh my gosh, you guys, I have so many clips to make. What the freak? It's never ending. It's never ending.
Beat up because he kept saying this is not going to work, and I'm concerned about his age. And he got beat up worse than I've ever seen a Democrat get beat up. And he was right. There were people who had the courage, not enough of them. And Scott Jennings is right. There was something going on.
Wow. When Van Jones is sitting there on CNN saying Scott Jennings is right. Wow.
And if it wasn't going on in
these Scott Jennings,
by the time you
dude, these Scott Jennings ones should do frickin' well. Dude, I love that Scott Jennings guy. That guy's been going virus. So I should do Scott Jennings reacts, and those would do well.
All that other stuff, and it wasn't always perfect, but that trust is broken, and you have to reestablish that trust by putting in no-nonsense warfighters in those positions who aren't going to cater to the socially correct garbage.
Wow, dude, that's our new... All right, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more.
Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez represents a district with the longest stretch of border in Texas, and he joins me now. And you've got a lot of farmland out there as well. It looks very much like the Central Valley. So let's start with what we just heard. Farmers worried that they can't have their crops picked if all of these undocumented workers are kicked out of the country. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's pick for border czar Tom Homan is telling them to start packing their bags.
Yeah, good morning, Martha, and thank you for having me. You know, if we're going after the guy that's picking tomatoes.
Really, Altair? You haven't seen? That's so weird. I still see it, Altair. What's so weird, Altair, is like when I log in as Lecture Fan on YouTube. When I log in as Lecture Fan on YouTube, I get Lecture Fan shorts recommended to me. But yeah, my shorts, I've been putting up a massive amount of shorts and they haven't been doing well.
Or
I don't
the
know
nurse at the local hospital, and we're not going after the convicted criminal, then our government has failed us. You know, our country was built on those fleeing.
Correct, Yangtze. Yep.
Persecution, and it would be
Burger Bros. What up?
Just absolutely terrible if we don't protect those that are doing it the right way. Legal immigration should
Really, Burger Bros. Why? What kind of work do you do and why is that?
never be mixed with these hardened criminals. I did a lot of campaigning this season, went all over the country, and there's no doubt that Hispanic Americans overwhelmingly chose Republicans to govern. In the House, we have the majority in the House because we won seats like Juan Ciscomani in Arizona, David Valadao in California, Gabe Evans in Colorado. And so our message has to be one positive if we want to hold on to these gains. If the message is we're here to deport your abuelita, that's not going to work well. It has to be one of holding these hardened criminals accountable.
But that is the message from the Trump administration. They are doing mass deportation. Pack your bags. You heard Tom Homan say that. Now, they have said they will deport criminals first, but they've also said everyone else. There are 11 to 13 million undocumented workers in this country. So how does this work?
Probably triple that number if you want to be serious about it. But yeah, they're illegal aliens. They need to go home. What's so hard to get through your head, Martha?
How do you convince them to let people who
and then I wonder why YouTube's not recommending my shorts.
I see it the exact same way. You know, months ago, I reached out to ICE and I asked for empirical data on how many convicted criminals are in our country. The number is hundreds of thousands.
More than 600,000.
It's absolutely mind-boggling.
I love esports, Burger Bros. I love esports. I watch esports all the time. It's the only sports I watch.
Even round them up? How do you have the manpower to even do that?
That's where we need to focus. We need to focus. I'm talking about the convicted criminal aliens that keeps all Americans safe. We need to put all our time, all our energy into that. And you do that by making sure that these task forces have the resources they need. You pull local, state, and federal resources to go after these criminals. You find them, you deport them, and you also have to do some other things too. You know, yesterday there were 1,600 people that enter our country illegally. We're on pace for over 500,000 people. Something has to change. In San Antonio, there was a police officer I met with, Vivian Rodriguez, that was shot in the line of duty because a Venezuelan immigrant fired upon her. I mean, the madness, it has to stop. So I think we start, all our energy has to be towards these convicted criminal aliens. And we go from there.
Let's go back to what the Trump administration or the future Trump administration has been saying. Tom Homan has said that he would deport entire families together, even if there is a child that is a U.S. citizen. He played a key role in the first Trump administration's family separation policy. Let's listen to what he said at CPAC.
I wake up every day pissed off because this administration destroyed the most secure border in our lifetime, and I'm sick and tired of hearing about the family separation. And no, I'm still being sued over that, so come get me. I don't give a right?
Here we are.
Boom! Get him, Tom Homan, get him.
To that.
That's my
Tom's a big
reaction.
boy, and he doesn't need me defending him. But the way I view it is what he's at the heart of what his conversation is saying is we have to end the lawlessness. And if you go out and show your hand and say we're going to enforce these laws,
he's much more specific in that. He's talking about family separation.
Well, I think
yes, they've said lawlessness, they've said criminals. They're talking about deporting everyone?
I think in his experience and in mine, what has happened is if you say I'm only going to enforce these laws and not the others, what's going to happen is these criminal elements are going to exploit that, whether it's single adult males, whether it's children, whether it's families, they will exploit our policies. So I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, we're going to treat everyone the same and we're going to start enforcing laws. I think that's a good start. We got to surge immigration judges to the border, get cases heard in days, not years.
You've said that for a long time. That hasn't happened.
That works. I think that works under every administration. I hope the incoming administration uses that advice and surges immigration judges so people get their day in court.
I want your reaction to one more thing on this issue, and that is Stephen Miller, who is Trump's pick to be Deputy National Security Advisor, said at a Trump rally last month, America is for Americans and Americans only. Your reaction?
I mean, my reaction is there is a lot of people that are upset, and this American First movement is very real because they feel as if lots of Americans are doing all the things they're supposed to do, and somehow they're in the back of the line. Things are turned upside down. This is where we have to get to keeping all Americans safe, make it a country that all Americans are prosperous. This division, I don't like the division. I don't like us saying we're picking the winners and losers. We got to get back to everybody rowing in the same direction.
And I should just correct myself. Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff. He's up for not National Security Advisor. As you know...
No, Burger Bros. Is it like 20 votes, though, or something? I think I heard.
President Trump announced he was nominating now former Congressman Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General. I want to play you what you had to say about him back in April.
I served 20 years in the military. It's my absolute honor to be in Congress, but I served with some real scumbags. Like Matt Gaetz, he paid minors to have sex with him at drug parties.
Matt Gaetz has denied those charges, but your reaction to his nomination?
There's not one person that I know of that hasn't met Matt Gaetz and has an opinion. So I wish him well. I hope he goes on and does good things for our country.
You would like to see him get that nomination?
I would like to see him go do good things for our country.
But wait a minute. What you just said is he's a scumbag. You want him to be confirmed?
I want him to do good things for our country. I want everyone to do good things for our country. And the division, the more we can be united under this unified government, I think the better off. His vote in Congress is certainly going to be missed. We have a razor-thin margin in the House. We have some real things to get done, like the spending package. The Farm Bill is very important. The National Defense Authorization Act. All those things need to happen.
And just quickly on Pete Hegseth, he also nominated to be head of the Pentagon. You are a veteran. He doesn't think women should be in combat.
Martha, no, I believe women. I've served with women in combat. They're some of the toughest warriors around. As you know, I'm the most senior enlisted service member to ever serve in Congress. I take, that's very serious. I served 5 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, and so I remember walking around with 25-cent AAFES pogs. And I think many of us have lost faith in this administration, especially after the 13 Americans in Afghanistan got killed and the Afghan women got sent back into the Stone Age. So nearly anyone will be in a better spot than what we currently have at Department of Defense.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Martha.
Up next, could Russia's war on Ukraine end sooner because Donald Trump is heading back to the White House? Ukraine's own president thinks so. The latest from ABC's Ian Pannell in Kharkiv after this break.
Good.
Now get the war.
So that's somehow not good news if the war's going to get over with? Wow.
Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Donald Trump, during his debate with Kamala Harris, promising a quick end to the war. The battle continues to rage between Russia and Ukraine. But could Trump's return to the White House help move both sides to a settlement? Our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, is on the ground in Kharkiv with the latest. Good morning, Ian.
Yeah, good morning, Martha. Russia launching one of its largest attacks against Ukraine this morning. Missiles targeting power plants and energy infrastructure across the country. In other words, it was an attack not on military sites, but an attack on civilians who are already facing a bleak winter of shortages. In 2 days' time, Ukraine is going to mark a grim milestone. 1,000 days of war since Putin's large-scale invasion in February 22. And the cost has been horrendous. Hundreds of thousands killed, millions forced from their homes, And although we may not hear about Ukraine as often these days, the war is as violent and deadly as ever. Ukraine is going to be one of the most immediate foreign policy challenges, of course, for the next Trump administration. And although the president-elect has already spoken to President Zelensky...
I haven't yet, Burger Bros, no. Pretty crazy to do that now.
...to talk to Putin, according to the Kremlin. But
Yeah,
Moscow
really, I agree, American Patriot. What's Russia going to do about it? Yeah.
is making positive noises, saying it regards Trump more favorably than Biden, and there are now growing voices who believe a peace deal may be possible. Trump has promised to end the conflict quickly, and many of his voters and backers want an end to U.S. funding of Ukraine's war effort. Even Zelensky believes that ending the war faster is possible under Trump, but on what terms? The fighting's raging in many areas. Putin's men, with the aid of North Korean soldiers, ammunition, and now artillery, are pushing hard in Kursk,
right, American Patriot, yeah.
partly occupied by Ukrainian forces. And Moscow's men are also making worrying gains in the eastern Donbass and here in the Kharkiv region. And the bombing of the country, increasingly civilian areas like this, is incessant. Many war-weary Ukrainians now accept they're unlikely to retake some of the land that Russia's annexed, like Crimea, and Putin's unlikely to settle without it. But Ukraine is going to need meaningful security guarantees that Putin won't break agreements and attack again, as he has done before. And if NATO membership is ruled out, then what does that look like? After so much blood and treasure has been spilled, Trump is likely to need a carrot as well as a stick to bring the two sides together. But he's likely to find that ending the war as quickly as he wants and in a manner that's acceptable to all parties is going to be far harder than he thinks. Martha?
Ian, panel in Kharkiv, thank you. When we come back, the roundtable digs into all the nomination news and confirmation concerns for the second Trump term. Will any Republican senators tell Donald Trump no? We'll be right back. And we are back with the roundtable. Alex Burns, head of news for Politico, Ested Herndon, national politics reporter for the New York Times, Rachel Bade, co-author of Politico Playbook, and Reince Priebus, former RNC chair and former Trump White House chief of staff, just back from Mar-a-Lago, and that's where I want to start.
Sure.
A lot of pushback on some of these nominees. How are they taking that, and how is this working down there?
Well, first of all, I was down there for a couple days. The transition office is West Palm Beach, but all the decision-making is taking place in Mar-a-Lago. I mean, that is the center of the political universe. And I got, it's extremely confident. The issues with the nominees are not really penetrating there. They're pushing forward. They feel like they've got a mandate. People are excited. There are also, I would say, a gathering of the most loyal people to President Trump. And so, we can get into this later, but the nominees are the people who you saw a lot of times at the rallies. I mean, they're at every rally. It should be no surprise to anybody
Madison Square Garden
at all.
last night.
They were all there. And yep, Madison Square Garden, these are his people. And so there's a lot going on, and the chief of staff is managing it all. And it was obviously very reminiscent for me of 2016.
And to that point, Ested, these are the people who will uphold, one would assume, Donald Trump's campaign promises.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the controversy of the selections can kind of complicate some of this, but I think we should see it as a candidate following through on the campaign promise. He promised a DOJ that was focused on retribution. That's how you get a Matt Gaetz pick. He promised, he made...
No, you liar. He promised to get rid of political retribution going after political. How these people are just everything they do and say is the opposite of the truth on these mainstream media networks. Unbelievable. This guy's a New York Times hack.
Tulsi Gabbard and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. stars on the campaign trail. And that's who there's a lot of folks who voted for him for the purposes of having an RFK Jr. disrupt a big pharma at HHS. And so I don't think that was the fullness of the result that we saw on Tuesday. But they are taking a mandate, and they have campaigned over the last year and a half from the premise of their base and kind of asking others to come along with them. I think that signals a difference in governing from 2017 until now. He's not focused on the guardrails or appeasing establishment or things like that. He feels like he's running a campaign to kind of govern in his most purest form, and that the electorate expects that.
Yeah, Donald. So, Rachel, exactly. But now the pressure is on the Republicans in the Senate. We've got John Thune. How will this all work? Will he get those nominations through?
Yeah, it's a good question and one everybody is asking, Martha. Look, I mean, the Senate Republican Conference is one of the most elite, high level and exclusive clubs here in the United States. And look, they really relish their independence. But this is Donald Trump's Washington right now. I mean, he had a decisive victory on election night, and he's the reason that Senate Republicans have the majority in the first place, because they rode, his coattails to this, 53-seat majority that they now have. So they might not like these nominees.
Is that right, Num? That's crazy, Num, about the Chinese volunteers getting thrown into the meat grinder by Russia. Wow.
Let's be clear, they do not. A lot of them may not say it on the record, but they do not. But they're expected to really fall in line. And, I think some people who are sort of critical of these nominees, they've taken heart that Republicans have chosen John Thune, as you just mentioned, to lead the Senate. He's sort of a McConnell, acolyte. He's more of an institutionalist, not like...
Look at that. They're saying, we're happy. We're happy we got a Mitch McConnell acolyte. Holy cow, these people are sick.
But some have taken heart from that, and John Thune's on board with
wow.
everything Donald Trump has thrown at him.
Yeah, and I mean, but the other thing is, these senators, when they voted for Thune over Rick Scott, who was very much the MAGA candidate, who wanted to totally upend the chamber, they did it on secret ballot. I mean, this is not a vote that they're going to be accountable for. It's going to be very different when they go on the Senate floor with the lights on them and actually vote against, their party and the party leader who wants these people in the cabinet.
And Alex, do you see any overreach here on Donald Trump's part, especially some of those nominees, Matt Gaetz, for instance?
Well, we're going to find out. And to Reince's point about the feeling in Florida that they have a mandate, every president who comes in with united control of Congress, which has been every president in my lifetime except for one, feels that they have a mandate. And then we see what happens when you actually try to put your people and your policies up for a vote, right? Joe Biden felt he had a mandate to be the new FDR. We all know how that ended, right? George W. Bush, when he was reelected, felt he had a mandate to reshape Social
all that was like, come on.
Security. We all know how that ended. I'm not making any predictions here about how this one is going to end, but I do think we should see this selection of nominees as a decision to put that mandate to the test and to spend capital up front on personnel. And it is worth, I think, just stepping back and taking stock. A president can only spend so much capital, can only have so many fights at one time.
And we're going to see extremely explosive hearings at a time when Donald Trump is going to be wanting to advance, tax cuts, put, up new legislation potentially on the border in Congress. He's going to be putting a lot of energy toward getting these people over the finish line. I mean, you can imagine a situation where a lot of these women who have made these allegations against these candidates, this woman who went to the House Ethics Committee and said that Gaetz had sex with her when she was a minor, this conservative woman who said that Pete Hegseth assaulted her at a conference. You can imagine a scenario where Democrats are pushing for them and wanting them to come to the Hill. And this is going to make the Brett Kavanaugh hearing sort of look like child's play compared to what we're going to see.
And Reince, you told me you talked to Donald Trump just yesterday about some of these more controversial nominees. Is he going to double down? Is he backing off at all?
No, I mean, he made it very clear to me that the Matt Gaetz pick is not three-dimensional chess to help another nominee get through. That this was what he wanted to have happen. And when Republicans voted in impeachment against Donald Trump, he had a list of who those people were. And almost all of them in the House are gone. One couple quick things, though. Number one, you have to remember, Donald Trump spent the last couple years going in and out of courtrooms, getting Mar-a-Lago raided. I mean, part of the reason why the First Lady, Melania Trump, didn't go to meet with Joe Biden was, hey, you raided, my bedroom. I mean, you came, you want me to have tea with you? So he spent that, and he feels like he's gone to hell and back.
Yeah, seriously, good point. Well said by Reince there.
Times. So this is also a big middle finger to the DOJ and the FBI. And the last thing, again, the Gaetz play and all these other nominees come after 4 years of being through the gauntlet. In 2016, that cabinet was universally praised when we walked in the door. But over time, Donald Trump learned, And now he's
right.
learned from that
And
wants
instead, I want to
change
come
it.
to you on that. Yes, it's very different from then. He lost a lot of generals. He lost a lot of secretaries of defense because they disagreed with him or because they were not loyal. These are loyalists.
These are loyal, and just from the voter perspective, which I spend a lot of my time at his rallies, Trump supporters talk about how they feel his last agenda was blocked by a group of Washington insiders who are not as supportive, whether it be cabinet or congressional Republicans. It's been their mantra over the last year and a half that if they were to come back, they're looking for a Donald Trump who kind of blocks out some of those guardrails. So I think we should see those picks as reflective of that. Also, Gabbard, RFK Jr., Matt Gaetz, him bringing them to Madison Square Garden last night for UFC events, no accident. He is trying to make these people kind of folksy heroes in that same image. And so that even if they are rejected, it comes at it then plays into that narrative of Washington again, thumbing their nose at the duly elected president. And so whether or not, the mandate question is an interesting one to me because I can totally see a universe where they're overreading kind of what the electorate says of them. But to Reince's point, I don't know if Donald Trump cares about that, to be honest. It feels as if the more important thing he has learned from last administration to this one is to prioritize power, to prioritize reshaping government in the way that he most wants. And whether that has a political blowback or not in 2 years,
And it's
I think
almost
they'll
like
deal with that
the more
then.
criticism, the more he pushes forward.
It is. I do think Matt Gaetz is clearly in a different category than the rest of the nominees in terms of the political resonance and the political standing he has in Washington. I totally agree with what you just said about the sort of different set of priorities than 2016. I don't think there's going to be a sort of Rex Tillerson, he's central casting, and actually after 45 minutes, it turns out I hate him and distrust him, right? That's not the lineup you have right now. The criticism of Gaetz is not coming just from Democrats or just from the establishment. You have had vocal MAGA-aligned House Republicans saying this guy is beyond the pale.
Oh, come on, bro. Come on, bro. You expect us to believe that crap?
In the early 2000s, they built 2,000 Fox Newses and 2,000 Rush Limbaughs all throughout the internet, and we didn't even know they were doing it, and we got egg on our face.
Dude, I wonder, am I one of those 2,000? Let me just throw up like a couple, 3, 4 here of these, and then we'll watch Face the Nations next. Yeah, that's the same thing Carville said, guess. That's the new Democrat talking point. That's the new DNC talking point, is that Trump didn't win in a landslide. It doesn't have a mandate. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. It's absolute. I love how a lot of my clips, and I'm making these clips, it's like people that are right now here in chat. It's like me talking to you guys like 5 days ago. None of these are getting any views. YouTube hates me right now for some reason. I don't know. TSA is under DHS, and hopefully Kristi Noem. And remember, Kristi Noem did nothing on COVID. She was the only governor that got it 100% right and had the government do nothing on COVID. So 100% right. Did nothing. Get rid of TSA, please. Come on, these should be going virus, dude. These are great clips. Oh, here's the Doge one. I think I already shared this one on YouTube, but I'll throw it up again. Doge. Put me in for Doge. These two wonderful Americans will pave the way for my administration to dismantle government bureaucracy / excess regulations, cut
by 30%, but we were not able to talk about crime because the woke police would not allow that.
What are the woke police? The woke police won't allow Debs to talk about crime. Oh, man. Oh, man. Bill, ever heard of that? Give me this communist socialist. Oh, yeah, steal money from the rich people and give it to poor people so they can buy homes. The dumbest idea in economic policy I've ever heard of. That's the most inefficient use of resources. Oh, man. All right. So that is, let me see here. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, well, that's 8. That's 8 more. All right, you guys ready for Face the Nation? The next biggest, fakest, almost second biggest, fakest?
We're joined now by Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, who joins us from Lexington. Good morning to you, Governor. You're a blue governor in a very red state. How do you even begin to try uniting a country as divided as this? Are there lessons we can learn from Kentucky?
I think there's absolute lessons that we can learn from Kentucky, a state where last year I won as a Democrat by 5 points and Donald Trump just won by 30. And I think it basically boils down to both running and governing, where people wake up in the morning and what they worry about when they go to bed at night. And that's not the next election. It's their job and whether they make enough to support their family. It's the next doctor's appointment for themselves, their parents, or their kids. It's the roads and bridges they drive every day. It's that public school they drop their kids off at, and it's public safety in their community. The goal here is to focus on all of those things where if people don't feel secure in those areas, they don't get to anything else. They don't get to the crazy thing that some politician said last night or this morning. They don't get to that next piece of policy that's out there. So it's about a relentless focus on people's everyday needs and their everyday life.
We're going to take a break, come back, and have the rest of the conversation on the other side of it. All of you, please stay with us. More from Andy Beshear in a moment. Welcome back to Face the Nation. We return to our conversation with Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. Governor, Kentucky has a lot of coal. It's got natural gas. Mr. Trump has selected Chris Wright, the CEO of Liberty Energy, to be the next energy secretary if confirmed. He's also selected Doug Burgum, the governor of North Dakota, to run the Interior Department, and he's promised to open up more federal lands to drilling. Do you have any idea what the impact would be on your state from the signals being sent with these selections?
Well, we'll see. I mean, I saw the comments recently from the CEO of Exxon, which was a little different than what we might expect, talking about needing to move to greener forms of energy regardless of what the policy of the day is. And I certainly see from companies that are coming into Kentucky each and every day. We just announced a new industrial battery facility that's going to create 1,600 new jobs. They demand a certain portfolio of energy. Yes, the lights have to come on, but especially over time for their customers, they want a certain amount of renewables. So what I've seen as governor is a private sector push that I do not think is going to change. Demands placed on states, demands placed on utilities, and the private sector ultimately moving us to a more diverse and cleaner portfolio. So here in Kentucky, yes, we have many traditional forms of energy, and they have really good jobs, and we want to make sure that we never look down on and we support each of those jobs. But my goal is to diversify our production as much as we can so that we have the jobs of the present and those jobs of the future.
You've said Kentucky has something like 10,000 jobs related to electric vehicles. You really made a big push on that. During the campaign, Mr. Trump vowed to undo the electric vehicle mandate. That's what he called it. And he's going to, he says, repeal the law that includes credits for green projects. Do you know at this point if Republican leaders intend to keep parts of that? And are there projections on what repealing that law entirely would do to the job creation in your state?
Well, it's really concerning. You look at a state like Kentucky that voted for President-elect Trump by 30 points, and it's 10,000 EV-related jobs on the line, and those are only growing. Go up to Ohio and look at that, I think, $20 billion chips factory, which I'm a little bit jealous of, but happy for the people of Ohio and what that would mean, another state that voted for the president-elect. So you look at all of these jobs and jobs of the future that have come to what the administration will probably view as red states. It's important that these projects continue. Remember, a lot of the people taking these jobs that support their families, voted for President-elect Trump because they thought that would improve their job, that he was focused on their job. So I hope that he will get good advice, and I'll do everything I can to get my message out through our federal delegation of how important these jobs are. And they're not in urban Kentucky. They're in rural Kentucky. They are game-changing investments that have created a bright future here, and I'm certainly going to do everything I can as governor of Kentucky to protect them. And not because I'm a Democrat, but because I've shown my people that every single day I'm going to try to create a better life for them, and that's what those jobs do.
Yeah, $14 billion between now and 2030 was what was promised to your state. I wonder if you just think Democrats didn't do a good job of explaining that.
Well, I certainly don't want to do any finger pointing because the vice president had 107 days, and she did her very best. And I proudly crisscrossed the country in support of her. But what I know is going forward over the next couple years, we have a chance every day, every moment, to show the American people that we are laser focused on jobs, on their health care, on their infrastructure, on their kids' education, just those everyday worries. And with this administration, at least right now, selecting some very extreme appointees, it's a chance to make a real difference, to really show people that we're where their basic needs are.
Well, but there was, as you know, some analysis after the fact among Democrats about the focus on some culture war issues, or so to speak. Congressman Seth Moulton said of transgender issues, I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. He says he's speaking authentically and said Democrats should do more of it. Do you think Democrats have been out of touch on some of these things that obviously resonate in states like yours?
Well, I think that all candidates should stand up for their beliefs, and that we don't have to abandon those beliefs. You know, I vetoed one of the nastiest anti-LGBTQ bills that my state had ever seen in my election year. But I did 2 things. Number one, I talked about my why. For me, that's my faith, where I'm taught that all children are children of God, and I wanted to stick up for some children that were being picked on in a pretty rough bill. But the second thing is the voters in my state knew the very next day I was going to be working on jobs. I was going to be opening a new health clinic, first hospital in our largest African-American neighborhood in 150 years. We just cut the ribbon on. We've created 2 pediatric autism centers in Appalachia so that people don't have to drive 2 hours. So it's both sharing your why and your authentic why for your views, but the other piece is about that focus. Because remember, if we're talking about this issue of the day, and then we're talking about what Donald Trump said last night, and then we're talking about jobs, we're only spending a third of the time talking about what people are worried about and what impacts their life the most.
Governor, thank you for joining us today. We'll be right back. We're joined now by Sue Gordon. She served as the Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence during Donald Trump's first term in the White House. Good to see you here again.
Great to see you, Margaret.
So you personally briefed Donald Trump as president in the Oval Office. If this nominee to be, Tulsi Gabbard, becomes the Director of National Intelligence and John Ratcliffe becomes the CIA Director, are you confident that Mr. Trump will be told the information he needs to know and not just what he wants to know?
Well, I think that's the question of the day. Intelligence is weird because it's always uncertain, and you are always making an assessment so that a decision maker can figure out what they're going to do with it, and so it's particular. And your only job is to ruthlessly report what you see, not what you prefer. So that's the primary job of the DNI, is to go in there and to be his principal advisor on intelligence. You're the first in, you're the last out. You cannot afford to, I'll say, pander to preference. Loyalty doesn't serve you well in that job. You have to be so committed that you will say inconvenient things. I will say, the former president would tell you that I would talk to him about Russian interference. I know he hated it, but Russia was in fact interfering, and he needed to hear that information. So do I believe that Tulsi and John can be that person? If they believe they must be, they can learn. If they lean on the women and men of the intelligence community, they will produce an assessment, but that's a hard day, and you better be good at it.
You had to undergo an FBI background check to obtain a security clearance and to maintain it. You were a career official, 25 years at the CIA, then, as we said, moved on to national intelligence. The New York Times is reporting that Trump team may bypass the FBI process and just use a private firm to vet candidates. Then when the president is sworn in, he can grant access to the nation's secrets rather than go through that screening. What risk is there in bypassing the FBI?
Well, the first risk is that you will get an incomplete picture of the human that is carrying both the trust of the American people and the trust of our allies and partners and the trust of the women and men that are putting their lives on the line for that judgment, right? Everyone hates vetting. It's intrusive. You don't know why anyone should have to do it because you know who you are, but the truth is, we know adversaries and competitors will exploit humans to be able to advance their interests, and you want to make sure that the people that hold the American people's trust and the most precious pieces of information we have of advantage have no cracks in who they are. And so it seems expedient, but I think it will ultimately harm the institution. And by that I mean the institution of America, if you have people who we discover later.
The institution? No, you don't mean that. You mean the institution of the deep state. Thank you very much.
That they should not have had access, or we discover later that they were vulnerable to the actions of our allies and of our adversaries and competitors.
Because it's leverage on them.
It is. I mean, the craft of human intelligence is actually finding someone who has a weakness and getting them to be able to advance your interests. And and what a really good day is when you find someone whose interests align with yours, and then you really push that. So a private firm isn't going to have the standards that we've had. I know it's inconvenient, but I think it's a bad strategy and risky for America.
So CBS has also learned that to date, the Trump team
So much,
signed the
Panzer.
paperwork
So
that
much.
would start the process of the national security briefings so that someone's not walking in cold. They're briefed and up to speed. Along with these background checks, the Partnership for Public Service, a nonpartisan group that helps with the transitions, confirmed that to CBS. Is there any good reason not to sign those papers? And what does it do for the officials who arrive without being read in on what's happening now?
Yeah, I can't think of a good reason. I think one of the great falsehoods that's been.
What a joke.
In order to be able to serve America, they don't matter anymore.
Sue Gordon, thank you for explaining this very opaque world of intelligence to us and for your analysis today. We'll be back in a moment.
Deep state.
Dr. Deborah Birx served as the White House coronavirus response coordinator.
No way. They're bringing this old hag out? Wow.
In Donald Trump's first term. She also had a long career in public health in the Army, working on AIDS in Africa at the State Department, as well as time at the CDC. Good morning. Welcome back.
Good morning, Margaret. Glad to be with you.
So, Dr. Birx, I want to ask you about your views on public health, which we're looking at because of this nomination, potentially, of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. HHS has wide portfolio here. Vaccines, medicine, oversees Medicare, regulates food, beauty products, baby formula, reproductive health care. What would the impact be of having someone without government experience in that top job?
Well, I think the most important thing is what team he would bring with him, because you're talking about really a large cap corporation with a highly diverse group, which you have to really bring together and, frankly, eliminate some of the duplications between these agencies to really become more cost effective. And so really having a management person at his side, a chief of staff perhaps, that has really come out of industry, that would know how to bring and look and bring those individuals together that are running the other agencies, because it's a very, HHS is probably one of our most complicated departments.
So you're saying people with experience around him, we need to look at those lower level appointees Mr. Trump might make. Well, what's so interesting with RFK Jr., is how he has in some ways tapped into this health movement in America. He's talking about more regulation, not less, when it comes to American food. Here's some of what he said.
I'm just going to tell the cereal companies to take all the dyes out of their food. I'll get processed food out of school lunch immediately. 10% of food stamps go to sugar drinks, to sodas. We're creating diabetes problem in our kids by giving them food that's poison, and I'm going to stop that.
Those sound like good goals. Can he actually take on big agriculture and get that through?
I think because a lot of the people who are suffering the most from these additives are actually people in our rural areas. 16% of the Americans live in a rural area, but they are providing all of our oil and gas, all of our fiber, all of our cotton, and all of our food. And the level of diabetes in these communities, because of their access to certain foods, is extraordinarily high. I just came out of the field. 58% of the adults in the town that I was just in had already diabetes or pre-diabetes based on a household survey where we went house to house. This is the reality of America. And so what I'm hoping is he brings his transparency for all Americans and we really start to tackle these issues one by one by one. I think everybody across America wants to have healthy kids that they know will grow up and not end up with the complications of diabetes or heart disease.
It was very hard for Michelle Obama when she was First Lady to get any of that done. And it might be hard for lawmakers who come from some of those agricultural states to vote against their own interests in terms of the farm subsidies and the like.
Well, we're not talking about eliminating good food. We're talking about using all of their ingredients in a way that is more healthy for Americans. And I think that's what people are calling for now. Europe did it years ago. And I think we're capable of doing that. We are really smart, high levels of technology. We can make food tasty without a lot of these additives because we can see that other groups are doing it in a small way. So we're not talking about eliminating the need for wheats and grains. We're talking about putting those together in a healthy way.
I want to ask you as well about some of the things he said about vaccines. As you know, the vaccination rates are declining in America. He said things like restoring transparency around them. It's not really clear what that means. Why do you think there's a decline in vaccination?
I think there's two pieces to it. I think when we talk about things in public health, we don't acknowledge the concerns. Because when my children went to school, there was maybe 1 in 1,000 kids with autism, diagnosed autisms. Now it's 3 per 100. So every mom is seeing a classroom of kindergartners where one of the children has autism. That's scary to moms and dads. They want to know why. So it's not good enough for us to just say vaccines don't cause autism. It's us finding what is the cause of autism
well, I
and
think
reverse
a lot of people
it.
would absolutely agree that it is ridiculous that there isn't a lot of research and established causation of autism. But what he has said in the past is that autism is caused by vaccines. And there's no scientific basis for that conclusion, as I understand it.
That's correct. And so that's why when he talks about transparency, I'm actually excited that in a Senate hearing, he would bring forward his data and the questions that come from the senators would bring forth their data. What I know for sure is he's a very smart man who can bring his data and his evidence base forward, and we can have a discussion that many Americans believe already is a problem. So until we can have that transparency and that open discussion from both sides, I know the members have incredible staffers who will bring great questions from their constituents, and that hearing would be a way for Americans to really see the data that you're talking about, that we can't see that causation right now, but what is causing it? And so you're absolutely right. Addressing what the cause is will be critical. And I think what has confused people is we weren't clear about what COVID vaccines do and don't. And so now people are questioning, well, what do my childhood vaccines do and don't? And they don't understand that some of the vaccines that their children are getting protect them from both disease and create herd immunity. And some of them that they get are just for their child, like H-flu and Pneumovax, to protect their child from getting very serious illness. And we're just not explaining all of this correctly.
Well, and that's why the messenger matters so much on this, which is why his past statements are being scrutinized. You worked on AIDS for a good part of your career. He has said that he doesn't take a position on the relationship between HIV and AIDS, but then he laid out alternative theories in his book and said Dr. Fauci never produced a study to demonstrate his hypothesis using accepted scientific proof. Do you agree with that assertion on HIV and AIDS?
Well, having spent a career in understanding how HIV and AIDS progresses, HIV virus is the cause of AIDS.
Period.
There's a whole set of things that happen, and I think what HIV taught me is it's asymptomatic for 10 years. And we're finally recognizing how important asymptomatic disease progression and disease transmission is. That's what HIV taught us. But what other HIV taught us was the entire human immune system. So by investing in HIV research, we learned about CAR T cells that we use today in cancer. So a lot of these research and investments pay off in other areas. And I think once he's there at HHS, he'll see that.
If he's open to the data. Dr. Birx, thank you. We'll be right back. That's it for us today. Thank you all for watching. Until next week. For Face the Nation, I'm Margaret Brennan.
Oh my gosh. Sorry guys, I had to take care. I guess I literally just saw my wife. I literally just now, and it is, what time is it? It is now 2:15 p.m. and I just now saw my wife for the first time all day. I was like, oh my gosh. I was just thinking, I can't even believe I haven't even seen you all day. So we were hanging out and talking for a bit, had to catch up. So anyway, should we even do Meet the Press, guys?
This Sunday, confirmation battles. President-elect Donald Trump's controversial cabinet picks are sending shockwaves through Washington. and raising questions about how he will carry out his second administration.
I don't think it's a serious nomination for the Attorney General.
I was shocked that he has been nominated.
I have concerns that he can't get across the finish line.
It must be the worst nomination for a cabinet position in American history.
Will the Senate approve Mr. Trump's picks? Plus, total control. Republicans take charge of both chambers of Congress, clearing a path for Mr. Trump to enact his policy plans.
We are going to raise an America First banner above this place.
We have a mandate from the American people. We should regard this election not merely as a defeat, but more importantly, as a challenge.
How will Democrats operate with the GOP in control?
Politics is tough, and it's, in many cases, not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today.
My guests this morning, House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries and Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma. Joining me for insight and analysis are Amna Nawaz, co-anchor of PBS NewsHour, Politico Playbook co-author Eugene Daniels, former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, and Lonnie Chen, a fellow at the Hoover Institution. Welcome to Sunday. It's Meet the Press.
From NBC News in Washington, the longest-running show in television history, this is Meet the Press with Kristen Welker.
Good Sunday morning.
So bad.
President-elect Donald Trump is racing to assemble his cabinet, making it clear the most important qualification may be personal loyalty to him. Facing scrutiny, Trump's selection of now former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General. The House's bipartisan ethics investigation into Gaetz most recently zeroing in on alleged illegal drug use, sexual misconduct with a minor, accepting improper gifts, obstruction.
I'm so sick of this crap. It's like, we don't care about D.C. investigations. D.C. is a corrupt swamp that hates conservatives. We don't care.
Other allegations, but effectively ending this week after Gaetz resigned from Congress following Trump's announcement. Gaetz has denied wrongdoing. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are calling on the committee to release
I agree. Straight up defamation. Yep.
its report before a confirmation hearing.
The House Ethics report, would you want to see it before voting on it?
I don't want there to be any limitation at all on what the Senate can consider.
So you want to see it?
Absolutely.
Do you have any concerns about someone who's been accused of sex trafficking, possibly leading the Department of Justice?
I have concerns that he can't get across the finish line, and we're going to spend a lot of political capital.
You're not on the House Ethics Committee release that report?
Yes,
you do.
I do.
House Speaker Mike Johnson initially said, quote, "The Speaker is not involved with what happens in ethics." But one day later, and after a visit with President-elect Trump at Mar-a-Lago, Johnson reversed course, saying he would strongly discourage the report's release.
It doesn't follow our rules and tradition. There's a reason for that. It would open up Pandora's box. I don't think that's a healthy thing for the institution.
Now, Gaetz has been a fierce critic of the department he has now been tapped to lead, a department that investigated him for sex trafficking but did not charge him.
I don't care if it takes every second of our time and every ounce of our energy. We either get this government back on our side or we defund and get rid of, abolish the FBI, CDC, ATF, DOJ, every last one of them, if they do not come to heel.
Now, several GOP sources have told NBC News that more than half of Senate Republicans, including some in senior leadership positions, are privately saying they don't see a path for Gaetz to be confirmed and would not support him. Then there's the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to run the Department of Health and Human Services. Kennedy now says he's not against vaccines.
I'm not going to take away anybody's vaccines. I've never been anti-vaccine.
But Kennedy has frequently pushed false and misleading claims about vaccines, despite decades of medical studies that show vaccines are safe and effective. Kennedy even touted a false conspiracy theory that COVID was designed to target certain ethnicities.
COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Can you name any vaccines that you think are good?
I think some of the live virus vaccines are probably averting more problems than they're causing. There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective. I do believe that autism does come from vaccines. A mountain of scientific study links autism to early vaccination with certain vaccines.
According to the CDC, there's no evidence of any link between autism and vaccines, which protect children from contagious diseases like measles. Also under scrutiny, President-elect Trump.
It'd be nice if they didn't just say that and if they actually came up with another explanation for a massive rise in people being screwed up.
Trump's pick for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, a former Fox News host and decorated combat veteran. Police in Monterey, California say he was investigated in 2017 for an alleged sexual assault after a gathering at a hotel hosting an event for Republican women. He was not arrested and no charges were filed. Hegseth's attorney telling NBC News it didn't happen. The Trump transition team saying, quote, Hegseth has vigorously denied any and all accusations and no charges were filed. We look forward to his confirmation as United States Secretary of Defense. Hegseth also has argued that women should not serve in combat roles.
You don't like women in combat?
No.
Why not?
I love women service members who.
This is so bizarre that they've chosen this as the issue that they're going to get obsessed about. What weird. People are nuts.
Because everything about men and women serving together makes the situation more complicated, and complication in combat means casualties are worse.
Now, the Pentagon opened combat roles to women in 2016, and women have succeeded and excelled in those roles since then. And joining me now is Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma. Senator Mullin, welcome to Meet the Press.
Thanks for having me on, Kristen.
Well, thank you for being here. I want to start with former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who, of course, President-elect Trump, as we just said, announced this week was his pick for Attorney General. You have said you trust Mr. Trump's decision-making in naming Gaetz, but you have been critical of Gaetz as well. Here's a little bit of what you've had to say.
We had all seen the videos he was showing on the House floor that all of us had walked away of the girls that he had slept with. And he walked up to me as Chrissy Noem, now Governor Chrissy Noem, and he said, man, she's a fine, and you can put the B word in place there. This is the type of individual Matt Gaetz is.
So, Senator, you clearly have questions about Matt Gaetz's character, but do you believe that Matt Gaetz is qualified to serve as Attorney General?
You know, there's no question that Matt Gaetz and I have had our differences, and that's no secret. Moving forward, I do respect President Trump's the right to appoint these individuals, but underneath Article 2, Section 2, Congress has to advise and consent. And Matt Gaetz is going to go through the same scrutiny as every other individual, and I'm going to give him a fair shot just like every individual. And at the end of the day, the Senate has to confirm him. I do think it's a very, very tough role. I've got a tough situation that I've got to set my personal opinions, and they're really not opinions. I got to set my personal situation with Matt to the side and look at the facts. If he's qualified, he's qualified. Be quite frank, I didn't even know he was an attorney until after he was appointed Attorney General, and I had to do my research on him. And I know that's crazy because I served with him, but I just never did the dig to find out actually his actual degree, what it was in.
Well, and speaking of digging into his background, the House Ethics Committee was about to release the findings of its investigation into allegations of misconduct by former Congressman Gaetz. Of course, he abruptly resigned before
That's a good point, Prola. Yep.
Could happen. A number of your colleagues, including members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, have said they would like to see that report. Should the House Ethics Committee release that report, Senator?
Absolutely, and I believe the Senate should have access to that. Now, should it be released to the public or not? That's I guess that will be part of the negotiations, but that should be definitely part of our decision making. Once again, I go back to it in Article 2, Section 2 in the Constitution. The Senate has to advise and consent these individuals, and in that process, we're going to give Matt Gaetz the same chances we'll give all President Trump's nominees. And by the way, I do believe that President Trump has the ability to pick some really, really good people. You can see why he's been successful in business, why he was successful in running his campaign, because he surrounds himself with the right people. So I have no doubt that President Trump believes that Matt Gaetz is the right person to do the right job. But at the same time, The background of Matt Gaetz does matter, and what the decisions that the Senate makes has to be within our boundaries of the constitutional authority that we have, and we will do our due diligence there. And I'll say this: Matt will be treated the same as every nominee out there, from myself and every other senator out there.
And you say background matters. I want to ask you about his views. Here's a little bit of what Matt Gaetz had to say last year about the very law enforcement agencies that he is poised to be tapped to oversee. Take a look.
We either get this government back on our side or we defund and get rid of, abolish the FBI, CDC, ATF, DOJ, every last one of them, if they do not come to heel.
Senator, do you support getting rid of the FBI, the DOJ under any circumstances?
No, I actually agree with what Matt was saying there. As hard as that is for me to say that, I actually agree with him, because what he's saying is he's got to come to the side of the American people and quit playing politics. The DOJ and the FBI has been politicized. There's no question about it. We've seen what they've done to President Trump. We've seen the attacks that they continue to go after him with. The DOJ is 100% weaponized. You saw the FBI and the fake Russia hoax. You saw the FBI shielding the Biden family and shielding the laptop from the American people during the election. If they don't want to come back and do their job, and their job is to keep America safe, to watch over America's freedom through DOJ, making sure the American justice system is running smoothly and leaving politics out of it. But they haven't lately. And if they don't want to come back and get focused on what the American people's mandate was for them, then we do need to revamp the system and say, hey, maybe we've got it wrong. So I don't disagree with what Matt was saying there.
Well, and worth noting, of course, Hunter Biden has now been convicted on federal charges. The charges that were brought against President-elect Trump were brought by individual grand juries.
We had to go through a process to get there.
Let me ask you broadly, though, do you support the president-elect telling his attorney general to prosecute, to go after people he considers to be his political enemies?
The president didn't say that. That's being taken completely out of context. And President Trump hasn't been the one that weaponized the DOJ to go after his political enemies. President Trump did not do that when he was in office the first 4 years. He could have clearly done that against the Clintons if he wanted to. He didn't. Who did weaponize the DOJ was the Biden administration. We saw them continuously going after President Trump, treating him completely different. Let's go think about the classified records that was kept at Mar-a-Lago versus the classified documents that was kept in the garage of Biden, and how the different reports read. It is no question they were treated different. Now, who has weaponized the politicals or the DOJ is the Democrats, and no one can deny what they did to President Trump with 4 years underneath Biden.
Senator, it's worth noting there's absolutely no evidence that President Biden had anything to do with the federal charges brought against President-elect Trump. But are you comfortable?
Garland was
appointed
by
with law enforcement agencies?
Or by President Biden, and there's no question that the White House was informed about what was happening.
But Senator, you have said we're too good of a
country. There's no evidence that Biden had anything to do with all of the lawfare against Trump. Give me a flippin' break. How do these people look in the mirror?
To have the Justice Department go after political opponents. Are you comfortable with the DOJ doing exactly what you're saying you oppose?
If the DOJ is willing to take a hard look at themselves and say, hey, we've got it wrong, there's some leadership positions that have to change. The people that made these decisions have to go and get the DOJ focused on what their priorities are supposed to be. And that's to be making sure the Constitution of the United States is equal for every person out there. And if the DOJ is willing to do that and capable of doing that, and they did it for decades, by the way, for decades. If they're able to get back and say, hey, we've got it wrong and admit wrong, then hey, yeah, let's do it. I tell people all the time, I've never fired a single individual for making a mistake. I will fire you if you can't admit that you made a mistake. And the DOJ has made multiple mistakes, and so has the FBI.
All right. Well, and again, Senator, let me just ask you bottom line here. Have you decided at this point whether you're going to vote for Matt Gaetz?
Oh, absolutely not. I haven't made a decision for who I'm going to vote for with any one of these nominations. As I said, I'm going to treat everybody the same and do my constitutional duty, and that is to go through advise and consent. And that means background. That means we're going to be doing everything we can to verify the individuals, know who they are, and put them in the best place to succeed, to put America first. And I understand the American people, we have an agenda and a mandate from the American people because President Trump won the popular vote and overwhelming electoral vote. And they want to have a new direction for this country, and we agree with that.
I want to ask you about some of these other picks. You're, of course, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, which will hold confirmation hearings into Trump's pick for Defense Secretary. Fox News host Pete Hegseth. You said on Thursday you're absolutely planning to vote for him. But since then, allegations of sexual assault